There was one board meeting like 4 years ago where you couldn't, there was some big accident on El Camino and jammed everything up. You just couldn't get here. It was weird for you.
Every time there is something in that intersection crossing in Mary, that's a nightmare because it's like, okay, let's 3 to 4 minutes to get here. So let's take at least 10 just in case, and then you are like 15 minutes in that intersection. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
There's no way to back up.
Yeah. But it took people like an hour to get here. It's really weird. Okay. I'm excited about this game.
Mine was like super high.
Yeah, I'll send you.
Oh, the ground. Yeah.
The groundhog in Canada as well.
There's.
You said it's not just the.
I did.
I thought there was just a funky one.
That's ours, but I guess.
I told her, especially in the first part, because she's got all the.
Oh, that's nice.
It's been doing.
Nine. You say.
Good.
My face. Things keep changing when you look it up. Too many passwords. There. Is good evening. It's now 6 o'clock. And I am calling to order this regular meeting of the Sunnyvale School District Board of Education. This meeting is available in English and Spanish. Will the translator please give instructions on translation services available, please?
Sure. Buenas noches. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación para esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración. Good evening. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in this Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select their language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the word icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration.
Perfect. Thank you. I see that today everybody is here from the board. I'm glad that Nancy was able to make it. scheduling issues. So we can begin today, and we're gonna start with the flag salute. Please raise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please, okay. I will now read our brief acknowledgement of life and land, of land and life. The Sunnyvale School District is located on the ancestral and unceded land of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, who have faithfully honored and cared for this land for thousands of years. We recognize that every member of the Sunnyvale community continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land. We acknowledge our responsibility to learn from the wisdom of the Ohlone people and to consider how we might work to repair injustices and to move forward together in honorable ways. Now, item 2, approval of agenda. First, if there is any member of the public who would like to speak on the approval of the agenda, please use the raise hand feature right now, or if anybody in the audience wants to speak about the agenda today. We don't have any cards on that item. Jesus, do you have anyone online?
No.
Okay. Then as nobody is, please, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval of tonight's agenda as listed.
Okay, second?
I will second.
Okay. Any comment or discussion? Or amendment? Okay, thank you. So the agenda is approved today. Oh, we need to vote, sorry. Do we have any votes? Please, board say aye, voting to approve the agenda.
Aye.
Okay, Nancy?
Aye.
Okay, perfect. So now it is, sorry about that. Chairs votes aye, so the agenda is approved. We move to item 3A, study session, and we're gonna have 3A, study session on general obligation bond and parcel tax. And the contact person is Corner Lynn Consultant. Hello, welcome, thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? My name's Connell Lynn, and I'm very happy to be back here in front of the board here in Sunnyvale. I've had a lot of experience doing the campaign, doing the bond and parcel tax campaigns for the district as well as for the high school district. So I really want to give a chance to give a little bit of history as well as the process and a potential timeline for potential bonds and parcel taxes. So we're going to talk about, excuse me, we're going to talk about both bond and parcel tax tonight. It gets a little confusing, and I like to start out by just separating the two because they are two very different issues. So bonds, for the most part, deal with facilities, and parcel taxes are more for program oriented. But even though they're both tax measures, one is an ad valorem or based on property tax, and the other is a flat rate tax. So both different type things. So I wanted to start with the general obligation bond, excuse me. And we could switch to the first slide. Or am I supposed to do that here? So the history of the Prop 39 is it was passed by California voters in 2000. Before 2000, bonds required a 2/3 majority to pass. So that was the biggest difference with Prop 39 is allowed a lower threshold to passage. So but it also added a number of requirements. So one of the first requirements is it requires 2/3 vote of the board. Before it was just a 3-2 vote would pass it, but now it requires at least a 2/3 vote. They must be held, the bond, 55% bond must be held on a regularly scheduled election. So it's really even years now that is consolidated into even year elections. Presidential and primary elections or gubernatorial and primary elections. The bond measure must include accountability measures, have to have annual audits. You need to appoint an oversight committee, which you have done for your past bonds. So I'm sure you've met with your oversight committee. You're aware of that. The maximum tax rate for an elementary district is $30 per 100,000. So the amount cannot exceed that amount. And at no time could you issue bonds if that was going to go over. It must include a project list, so you need to include a project list of specifically what you want to do. The project list is fairly general. You don't want to get into, square footage or things like that, but it's pretty much you need to describe the projects that you need to do and which schools are going to be impacted. There's a 75-word ballot question, so all of this, the resolution comes down to if people are actually going to the polls, they vote on a 75-word question. And there's a lot of legalese in that question, so that the question itself becomes a little bit complicated on the ballot because out of those 75 words, it must include the tax rate, it has to have the authorization amount, it has to have yearly costs. So there's a lot of words that are already taken care of. So you're trying to describe a measure. It's a summary of the measure, but the summary is down to about maybe 20 words to describe it. So it's a little bit complicated. And then also with bond measures, by law, there are no exemptions. With the parcel tax, you can offer senior exemptions and other exemptions like that. With the bond measure, you can offer no exemptions at all. So it's just straightforward. And if we could go to the next page, please. So the full resolution, I have a little mistake here at the top. It says the full resolution must be passed at least 88 days. It actually must be filed 88 days before. So you could actually pass a resolution today, but it just has to be filed 88 days before the election is held. So you don't want to wait until 88 days to pass it. So, and then for a bond measure, again, the next regularly scheduled elections are March 5th, the presidential primary in 2024. And then the November presidential election, November 5th of 2024. So I can step back 1 second with bond measures, you still do have the availability of a 2/3 election if you wanted to. There's really not a lot of good reason for that, but that option is still there. And then the history of bonds. So going back to, almost to Prop 13, is where really it changed the funding of the schools. So through the 80s, the schools were really, the schools were losing a lot of funds and facilities were just not in the forefront. So the first time the district really post Prop 13 tried an election was in 1996. And you see it was a much smaller bond. It was $34 million, got 85% support. It did require 2/3 at that point. But that was really when the schools were just starting to do bonds. They were under the 2/3 rule. It was difficult to pass. Most districts didn't think they could do it. So I think that a lot in the early 90s and the mid 90s, districts found that the communities were willing to support their schools, and it was really kind of the beginning of a new building boom. The district went on in 2004, 2013, 2018, and passed future bonds. I was looking at some statistics and on your voter file, and your voting is very consistent. You've grown, you have about 40,000 registered voters now, which is much more. But between the election in 2004 and the election in 2018, there was only a difference of 75 votes between the total of those two elections. So you have a very core group of people who I think you can really count on as your particular voters. So, and then the combined tax rate, the last I saw was in 2022, the combined rate of all those bonds is only $32.50 per 100,000 of assessed value. So I think that with the estimates, it would have been about $60. So the district has done a very good job with the bonds. It's been beneficial through the economy. The economy's treated as well. So that part is done very well. So that's basically the history on the bonds. I'll switch over to parcel taxes for a little bit. We have a new slide. Coming right up. My tech team. They're the best. So the history of the parcel tax, as you know, it was originally passed in May of 2011, and it was really a different economic time. The district had come off of 3 years where they had cut about $1 million each year, and they were looking at another 1.5 million in cuts in 2011. So when it passed, it was really to maintain program. It was not adding anything. It was really to avoid cuts. So it was a different kind of time. When we renewed it in 2016, the economy was a little bit better and was able to translate so that we were able to actually pinpoint 10 teachers at, a teacher at each school that the parcel tax benefited. So now we're at the point where it will need to be renewed before June of 2025. So it expires in 2025. The full resolution for this must be passed 90 days. With the bond, it's 88 days. With the parcel tax, there's just an extra layer of bureaucratic signatures where the county superintendent actually has to post it for 2 days. So that's the 2 days thing there. Other than that, it's the 75-word question. Same rules is kind of applied as what we talked about with the bond measure, where it needs to talk about the tax rate, how much it's going to raise per year, the impact on the voters. With the terms and conditions are really up to the district. That's the board's decisions on that. And the terms specifically are the length. So the parcel tax has been a 7-year parcel tax. And if I was looking at the dates, and it would be better if you were renewing it to do an 8-year, because it would put it into 2033. So it would give you the opportunity of a presidential election renewal in 2032. That's just a little something. But anyway, the amount, the terms are all really dictated by the board. The exemptions, so there are exemptions available for parcel tax, so senior exemptions, and then SSI and SSID. So those are options. You don't have to include them. There's no reason to not include them, and they've always been included in the past. The other thing is with the renewal, when we did the renewal in 2016, we did it 2 years early, so it didn't expire until 2018, but we extended it from 2018. And then we also we made sure that all the seniors who were exempted from the parcel tax were grandfathered in. But again, that's a decision that the board has to make. The election dates. So this is where it's really different from a bond measure, is that you really have almost any Tuesday you can pick for a parcel tax. There's established election dates, there's mail ballot election dates. You kind of see the litany of them written through here. The problem obviously with established election dates or special elections is going to cost the district a lot more money to put it on the ballot there. And we don't have specifics on that. We've just got kind of general figures from the elections office. And the history, again, has been, it was a special election when we first did that. But we also, when we did it in May of 2011, we wanted to do it before the fiscal year ended. So we needed to do it before June 30th that year, so that the parcel tax was implemented right away. It began July 1st of 2011. We do it in November for the renewal because, again, it wasn't up right away. It was down the road. And then last but not least, I think I put together a timeline. And this timeline is really, I did a generic, it says that November election, we don't have a November 7th election of this year. So this is just really to hold the same, it would be the same timeline for this November or for next November minus 2 days. And this would be along for a bond and a parcel tax, you would probably want this kind of lead time. So it really starts with analyzing, what the parcel tax has been doing, making sure people are aware of it. It's been a few years since we've done an election here. You have a lot of new people come through. So it's really making sure the parents are aware where the money's, going to go, what it's for. With the bond measure a couple of years ago, it looks like you did a complete facilities master plan where you really went out and talked to people. So it's kind of, you don't have to recreate that process, obviously, for a bond, but to just generate the interest and make sure people are aware. Now's the time to really talk about, what do you want to do? How do you see these things coming together? Voters registration statistics, I'm kind of constantly always doing that. It's just something we do. But again, you have 20,000 really core voters here, and then you have another 20,000 that are kind of coming and going, but depends on the election of who's going to turn out. If you have a general election, you have, probably 80% turnout. In a special election, you're like 40% turnout. So it's a huge difference. And then polling is something that the district can consider. The district hasn't, we really have not polled lately for the district. So it's something the district may want to consider. I'm not a pollster myself, but there's some good information that you could glean from that. When we did the bond in 2018, we used the high school district does an annual poll. And so the district just took a question from there as a subset. And so we just tested the ballot language. That was the only thing we tested, and it got approval from that poll. So that was the only polling we did. So I don't think we've done a poll here for anything going back to probably 2013. So, polling can be a good evaluation of the district, not just for the measures. It can help develop ballot language. It's probably not going to impact what your projects would be. So you're not going to look at the poll and say, okay, should we do this? I think your projects and what you want to do with this money are pretty straightforward. But it is a good evaluation tool that the district could consider. Moving on to June and July, you'd be preparing the resolution. There's an attorney that comes together, writes the resolution, has to be approved by the board. With a parcel tax, you have an extra step of holding a public hearing, so you have to do that. And then voting to place the measure on the ballot in November is, again, the 88-day deadline is really going to be the same for a penny. And then it's August really is where you need transition. The district can do a lot of information pieces. So, but once you call the election, the district can't advocate for the passage of it. So the district can inform, can put together fact sheets, frequently asked questions, things like that, but you can't actually take an advocacy position where you're encouraging yes vote. So that's where it really transitions to a campaign committee. And the district, we still have the campaign committee still exists from 2016, 2018, get my dates wrong. But Sandy Spires has been the treasurer, so she has cut the committee, and we have to file every 6 months, but it's intact and has about $22,000 in the account for any campaign that could be used for any school campaign. And I think that's really about it. Oh, the key dates. So again, the dates, there's one more page and that'll be very quick. So this would be the August 11th is the 88 days before an election. So that would be the filing date. After that, you have ballot arguments that are going to be, people could submit ballot arguments. So you can have 300-word argument. You can have 5 people sign it. If there's an opposition, you have to do a rebuttal. County designates the letter. Information is mailed out. Right now, we're still dealing with all mail ballots. So at this point, it would be an all mail ballot. I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to be continuing to see that. So mail, on this example, October 9th is when they're mailed out. The ballots are mailed out 28 days before any election. So that's really going to always be the same. Last day to registered vote is 15 days before, and then you have election day. So that's a brief summary of what we're looking at. And then there was a couple of questions that I saw before. And so one was what else would be on the ballot in November? And we really don't know what else would be on the ballot in November. If the city wanted to do something, I guess they could. But for the most part, there probably would not be a whole lot on the ballot in November.
We did learn that for November 24, the city is strongly considering a bond for to replace their main library, as part of the civic center. So of course, city council hasn't taken any action on that, but I heard that today and I thought, okay, that's good to know. I don't know if the high school district is considering anything, but that's just all data.
Yeah, and I don't know, the high school is pretty good, but with this whole Moffett Field thing, who knows what what that would bring. But the high school, their parcel tax doesn't expire now until I think 2030. So they're not into a renewal of parcel tax, and they just did a bond in June. So I wouldn't,
Yeah, there's not likely we would overlap with them.
I wouldn't expect to,
Yeah.
but
For the bond, since it makes sense to do it during a general election, because otherwise you have to do 2/3. 2024 would be the target. That's fits nicely with our plans, with our current bond and the plans for Sunnyvale Middle School. And then also what's on the horizon with Moffett Park. The growing possibility of needing a school in the nearer term than we thought, even last week. So we can talk more about that later.
Okay. So now it's time for
Did
public
you have more you were
comment.
to say?
oh, you had a couple other questions I could address real quickly. I'll just try and do that. So did we do the parcel tax and bond together last time? No. In 2018, we did bond. There were both a bond for the high school and for the elementary. So they did the two bonds together, but it was not a bond and a partial tax. And then going back to, I think in 2004, all three school districts were on the ballot at the same time. Cupertino was on, Sunnyvale was on, and Fremont was on. So there has been some history of that, but never the bond and the parcel tax together. In 2014, the high school district did renew their parcel tax and passed the bond on the same ballot. And so that was kind of what I was hoping may be our future here in the best case scenario. And then we didn't do polling last time. How favorable it would be to bundle these together? I think it would be very favorable if we could do that, but I think that we need to learn a lot more before we made that decision. The November elections are the least expensive. When you do the general election, they're obviously much more expensive. If you can run those things together, you can save costs on campaign as well as the overall cost of the election. So in the best of all worlds, putting them together would be the way to do it. And I think that's about it. So.
Now is the time for public comments on this item. Please use the raise hand feature online if you'd like to comment. Is there any public here that wish to talk about this particular item in the agenda? Didn't get any cards on this. What about online? No, not online? Okay. So, well, as there's no other boards, do you have any questions? Oh, well, if it's just questions, otherwise we need to approve, isn't it? Or no,
This is just
just
discussion.
we don't approve. Okay. So boards, the questions, you wanna, from the top, anyone? Okay, Nancy, you have any questions?
Yes. So it's been a while since we have assessed the community. How much generally does polling cost, and is that a part of an expense that the district can take on independent of creating a separate campaign finance fund?
Yes, so the district can pay for polling because it's research, so it's not considered campaign expenditures. And the polls are really running probably about 35 to 40,000, depending on how many questions and the length and then the number of people surveyed.
And statistically, how valid are these polls? When would you time a poll? In other words, if you're thinking about an election in the 2024 time frame, when would be the most reasonable time to conduct a poll?
Probably for 2024, I probably want to wait until after the March presidential primary election. So I think I'd want to have it prepared before then, but I think I'd want it for execution for November of 2024, probably wait until after the primary election is finished.
Is there any advantage of doing the general election versus the primary?
I think the general election is usually a more favorable audience that comes out. The primary elections tend to draw a little bit more partisan activity. And so I've just found that it's a little bit more of a
Toss up.
wild card. Yeah, more of a toss up. And we just don't know much about what the primary is going to look like quite yet. So, and the primary in 2000, March of 2000, it was really not the best of days for schools.
That is true. I think that the community generally has been very supportive of public education in Sunnyvale, and I think we've done a good job as far as communicating the need and doing good outreach. And that's something that I would consider an important base to build upon if you're moving forward, so that a poll would be very helpful, because our community is rapidly changing and we just need to know who we really have here and now. We would get an independent, we would hire somebody that is a pollster from your consulting services, or can you advise us on it?
I would recommend someone, yes, I have some people that I would recommend, and I think the district could probably be served by a poll in the long run. It is something you haven't really done in a long time, and I think the evaluation could be beneficial beyond the parcel tax and a bond, but it would help that too.
And is there any concern about running district parcel tax and or GO bond at the same time that a school board election is being held?
Is there a prohibition or?
No, there's no prohibition, but are there any concerns about running election at the same time of school board elections? We've changed our cycles from off year to on year, and so it's potentially a school board election cycle at the November 2024 election as well.
Yeah, no, I don't really see a problem with that.
And we did it last time, Nancy.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
We've already experienced that and it was fine, right?
Yeah, we did it with the high school in 2014 and it
We're
was
talking about us. in
yeah,
2018.
and then in 2016 or 2018, we also did it with, we did two bonds and yeah, so I don't see that as a problem. It's really never really come into I think if you had a really hotly contested board election where somebody was going to oppose one of the measures, then, but that has not been the case.
And as a reference, just for well, you already recommend more the November one, but as a reference, what is the difference in prices for us between the primaries or the November election? Because the parcel tax in the papers that you gave us in the study, it says like it gave us the parcel tax around $1 million for 10 years. And while the other one gave us last time about $100 million for the schools that were built and are being built right now. So to have do we have an idea of what is the percentage that we need to spend into having a special election if we go for a different day that is not, and what is the benefits price-wise of doing it in November?
Yeah, the county has not, we'd have to ask the county specifically for that, for the cost figures, but it is substantially less expensive in the primary. The primary is a little bit more expensive than the general election because the primary has multiple ballot types, even more ballot types than November. So it's a little bit more costly in general.
So actually, we have some data.
Oh, okay.
This just in.
Okay.
Lori got some data from the county. So in the 2016 election, we had measured BB and the board election at the same time. Total cost of that election to the school district, remember, this is a general election, so everything's on the ballot. That's going to be the least expensive. Total cost of the ballot to the district was $74,000. So that's those two. The board election by itself was 43,500 and Measure BB was 30,000. Okay. So I think you could extrapolate. Now I'm just like kind of wildly extrapolating. If you're going to have it on, a random day in May, well, it wouldn't be too random, but like on an approvable day in May, it probably would be close to $100,000. That'd be my guess.
But remember
Go
when
ahead.
remember when they were talking about recall elections, how a recall election for a district of our size would be, close to like, I think they were telling us about $1 million. I mean, that was for, Cupertino was $1 million.
Yeah, that was for
So
Dallas.
they're twice as big, right, at
Yeah.
least, so.
Or like 3 times even probably.
I mean, well, oh yeah, maybe.
They're
So,
about twice your size, yeah.
Only twice.
so maybe like at least $250,000.
Yeah, we could get some more data because we did do a standalone election, one of them, didn't we?
Well, yeah, and that's what I said in 2011, but it was a little bit of a different time. That's where you were looking at a $1.5 million cut that year.
Yeah.
So if we didn't do it in May, you were going through a year of that cut.
So I'm
we
just
did-
to figure out, like, we could go back and see what was the cost of that election.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I get that it's, 12 years ago, but it would give us a little bit of a
yeah.
reference point, how much an election would cost in a standalone. And that was mail only, I think.
Right, when you're sharing the costs, all the, the postage costs are shared as well. So if it's standalone, you're paying the cost to mail 40,000 ballots, and it's, it's not households, it's 40,000 individual mailers, and then if they all vote, you're gonna pay for the postage on the way back, so.
Yeah.
Where the government picks up some of the costs of that as well as then the shared costs in a general election, so,
For the one renewal, it's $1 million a year, right?
correct.
So.
So I would say if you wanted to like,
It's a couple teachers for that year,
Yeah.
right?
if you wanted to do something to the parcel tax, if you're happy with the renewal, with straight renewal, then I think, you're probably fine. If you start wanting to increase it, and I can speak with the experience with the high school district. The high school district has always wanted to increase their parcel tax. And every time they polled, it says, renew it, don't increase it. And it really hasn't mattered what dollar figure is associated with it. So, so they just stuck with the renewal. It's not that they didn't want to increase it, but that it was just not available to them. So that's where you can kind of test, if you wanted to look at things, that's where this November or, before it expires is if you wanted to take any kind of risks, that's when you would do it. I'm not recommending taking risks, but that's the time for it is really before it's dropped dead and going away.
The riskiest thing would be for it not to pass. That would be the most expensive option. So you want the best chance, right?
Exactly.
So,
But the board has options. So that's really what I want to convey. There's a lot of new members. Nancy's been here for a while, but there's a lot of new members. So I don't want to assume anything. I want to make sure that you know that you've got these options and it's your call. So.
So, for the next election, right, we're gonna be spending the last that we have in the fund for, from this bond. We're gonna be mid-construction of the SMS. We're gonna be finishing all the roof and all the HVAC. Well, we're gonna have the presentation today, I think. But we are like scrapping the bottom by the time we need that approval to finish SMS next year, pretty much.
You think we need it in 23?
No, in 24.
We need it by 24.
Yes, because we're gonna be mid-construction, we just have like the last penny account to be able to finish that building that is gonna be halfway. So it's after, we cannot wait more than that. If we
Well,
wanna redo the bathrooms or whatever after that.
And I think that you do, I don't think I said this, but that we need to be thankful for the community. The community has been extremely supportive of the schools here, and that's just not the case everywhere. And I don't think that's anything to be left aside.
We are very
So
grateful.
very grateful for that, so.
Like, definitely. Huh? Oh, sorry,
I was wondering, you said something about the high school district trying to raise it, but they only were able to renew it. Do you mean that they had two opposing?
No, they polled, so they did the polling. So the high school district does polling almost on an annual basis. So they specifically tested to increase the partial tax and it just came back. So that the decision was made to just renew it, not to increase it.
Is there any way we can get that data and see how
Yes.
what our area looks like on
Yes.
that, okay.
Yeah, there's crosstabs under Sunnyvale, and that's what we did for the 2018, where we just used a question in their annual survey to test the language. I think we tested their language as well. It wasn't their annual survey, I'm sorry. But yes, that is available. We
So
can
we
get
can
that
see-
through
We can see within their data how Sunnyvale voted versus Cupertino?
we can see how they responded to the surveys, yes.
How they respond.
Yeah, and Sunnyvale always looks pretty good with it. With the thing that's always surprising on Sunnyvale to me, and it's not really that surprising, is there's a lot of don't know the answers. A lot of people don't know because they're really not connected to the schools. You have a lot of apartments and things like that, so that impacts your survey as well. So if you're surveying for a special election or a general election, you can really kind of hone in on the voters who you really want to hear from. But yeah, the high school has all the data. I think I probably have some of that, so we can pull together all that.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I'm curious, with that information that if the city might put out a huge bond next November for City Hall, if you have any initial thoughts on like those competing interests, like both bonds being on there, like will voters say, oh my gosh, everyone's asking for money, I can't handle it? And from that perspective, would a March one be better, or like people have been very supportive of the schools and so we're probably okay? And I don't mean to cut us out, this is like new thing to process.
Yeah, I'd have to learn a little bit more. I don't know what the cost for what the city would want to do. We've certainly been successful being on the ballot with the high school district. The costs have been very reasonable. Tax rates have been very reasonable for the schools around here. I don't know what the city's tax rate would be like. I think the city would be looking at a 2/3. It would still require, the city would need a 2/3 passage for their bond unless there's something I don't know. Or the district obviously only needs 55%. So you'd be at a little bit of a benefit that way. But without a lot of, that's really where the polling could help.
Yeah.
If you knew that by, next year, then you could test some of that as well. See how that impacts it.
Thanks. In other bonds, there were positive results, even though we were apparently by dates in the middle of the last big recession. If all the people that say that we're doomed for the next year economically, if anything happened in the economy in general, is it like, what are your opinions about people voting for a bond for the schools in that environment? And we had used like a big, alarms because they were laying off in the Bay Area, et cetera.
Yeah, it's, we've gone through down times in California and bonds have still been successful. So, if the economy tanked completely, yeah, I'd be a little bit more concerned, but I just I'm not that concerned right now. But, over the last couple of years, we've learned to not really predict what can happen, so.
It's true.
So we don't have to we're not making any decisions tonight. If we were to decide that we wanted to do an election in November, we would have to make that decision during the spring with a final determination by our last board meeting in June to make it for the August deadline, unless we wanted a special meeting or something like that.
It seems like we have to start doing things in February.
Yeah, so actually.
So we just have to decide soon.
Soon, yeah.
We would need some direction.
So my sense is that you're all coalescing around a joint election in 2024. Maybe think about March, November's probably better. That gives us a little bit of time. But if you have other thoughts or other ideas that come up, let me know. And then I can talk to Isabel about putting this on the agenda again. We can move forward with that.
So I guess it's coming up with our why and our story, and creating a sense of urgency. And that isn't exact, that may be another discussion that independent of understanding about timelines of parcel tax and geo bonds. I certainly think that the pressures that may be coming forth with the real possibility and need of additional elementary slash middle combination program will push that forward. And for the geo bond, certainly. And do we have a sense of timeline of when we might know more about the urgency of the need? In any concrete ways that we can let constituents know?
I think, yes, Nancy, I think we're going to start to learn more about that as the specific plan is approved. So in our meeting with the city, was it just yesterday, Brandon? I think it was just yesterday. Kind of the indication we had from them was the developers originally were thinking in terms of developing commercial industrial out in Moffett Park, but just because of conditions now, they're leaning more towards residential. And the residential, they have some 4 to 5 projects, like huge projects, teed up, not the city, but the developers have them teed up and ready to go as soon as the specific plan is approved. So I think there's going to be a lot of residential growth fairly quickly in Moffett Park, not occupied until maybe 2025. And then we'll work with our demographer to see how fast the yields of students will be for that. Usually when there's developments, the students don't start appearing for a few years after that. But that gives us, I would say in the 10-year timeline, it's starting to look like that's when we want to start thinking about having a school built. All very preliminary, but 10 years sounds a long way away, but that's about how long it takes to build a school from idea to opening the door.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say, when we were running in 2018, a gentleman came up to me and I was, first time running for office, and he was demanding to know about the bond and the parcel tax, and I did not know much about it, and the point of the conversation, which like my neighbor knew more about it, right? The person next to me knew more about it. But it was really quite pointed questions like, well, either you're terrible at spending the money or you're terrible at planning. So which is it? It was like very much like, tell me why you're asking me for money again. Like, didn't you just come for recently? So I think for people who aren't familiar with like the different reasonings, it's just going to be having a very simple way to talk to people about it would be really helpful. So you explained it very well just now.
Well, I think, Leah, I can compliment, and Leah has done a great job of, through the newsletter. That really kind of started through one of these campaigns, and you've done a good job of communicating with not that everybody reads all, everything, but I think you've made a good effort at doing that. And then having the construction team as well, having Brant and the Rob 1 and Rob 2 before that. The district's done a great job managing its own projects, which a lot of districts can't do, so.
No, and I'm not saying that, I'm not being.
No, not at all.
It's just like for someone who was new and for someone who didn't know or was kind of put off by it. So it's just kind of It's just a perspective.
They're very confusing. I mean, and people then throw them together, the parcel tax and the bond, you think they're interchangeable and they're very, very different animals really, but.
And when you build this measure, and as you say, you need to be somehow specific about where exactly the money is going for what. When you plan for a project, I mean, construction can change very quickly, steel can go twice as much in, I don't know, very quickly. How much, how specific you need to be about how many schools do you plan to support in the next 10 years or the next 15 years, and how long it takes you to have everything. We already have like our master plan that we just finished last year. And there is already a schedule of which one is the oldest one, which one is the next one online to be refurbished. So with that information, how long does it take to actually have a legally logic enough plan to go?
Not very long at all, because the project list wants to be fairly generic, so it's gonna incorporate all the schools, because if you need to do rewiring or you need to do roofs or something like that, you wanna make sure that all schools are covered. So the project list is fairly generic. It's not getting as specific as the facilities master plan would be. You wouldn't wanna get into, details like we're gonna build a 960 square foot classroom and then you end up at 962 feet, and you have to pay for that 2 feet out of someplace else. So it's really kind of giving an overall picture of what the district has done. It would be a continuation of the past projects. You can talk about some of the past projects of what you've done and how it's going to continue to impact the schools. But it would really not take very long for the attorney, I believe Janet Mueller has been your bond counsel. So it really would not probably take too long to put that together.
Any more comments or questions, Paul?
I was just say, I think Mike's summary, I agree, I think that's, unless any other board members feel differently, I think that was a good summary of where we're all at.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Well, if there are no more comments or questions about this issue, I think, let's see. Yeah, I
Thank you,
think we
Connell.
can move.
Thank you.
Very much
Thanks,
for
Connell.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
for all your work and for putting together the presentation.
Thank
Very
you.
much. And we have no questions and perfect. So I don't know if board you want to take a few minutes or we just continue to the next point. We can, okay. So it's 6:49 and we're gonna take 5 or 10? 5 minutes. We're gonna take a 5 minutes break, a 5 or 6 minute break. So we're gonna be back at 6:55.
Not unless I change. So give me a few moments here.
Start with Bridget, sorry, Bridget, and then we'll go back to her.
Oh, okay. So I have several things. I sent in my comments around my activities to Jesus to put in the minutes. But I do want to make a note of a couple of things and give a couple of updates. Isabel and I did the site visit for Bishop. Oh, there we go. So Isabel and I did the site visit for Bishop. And just to report out to the board, they're very interested in doing, they're exploring play-based TK. So their TK right now is a little bit more like a pre-kindergarten. It's like focused more on that, and they're looking at play-based options, and they're starting to explore that as a team. They also highlighted for us the impacts of the LPAC on their student population, because it takes about a month of testing and, around the LPAC and activities around the LPAC. And it really takes a high toll on the student population who are English learners. They're not able to get their pull-out resources. And, they'll be telling us more about that in their presentation, but we did hear just how much it impacts the students themselves. And then another idea that they floated was, they started hiring some more teachers and staff who speak Spanish, and they were expressing some interest in maybe having, in the possibility of, if we partnered or if the community college could offer educator and admin Spanish for Spanish on some of our school sites. Maybe there'd be some interest there and some cohorts going through taking Spanish. And then for SCCSBA, lunch brunch tickets are available. Only 2 of us have RSVP'd, so I hope more of us go. It's available in person and online, and it will not be recorded. That's Saturday, February 25th. And then next week, the meeting stuff's kind of boring. Okay, well, fabulous. The meeting stuff is fabulous. Topics, but I don't want to hear about my planning on that. But one thing, when we were I want to thank Mike for a couple of things. First of all, for Leadership Sunnyvale. It's been a long time we've met as a group for our governance development, but he just really has been just a shout out for being an education leader, because he gave an awesome presentation for Leadership Sunnyvale solo. He was amazing. And then also for our SCCSBA and Santa Clara County Office of Education, the new board member workshop. He came on a Saturday and was on a panel and talked to people about being a superintendent with some other superintendents, and just really saved the day because it's very difficult to get superintendents there on Saturday. And also just really, really made people feel comfortable and excited about working as a governance team. So that was amazing. And then Dr. Dewan mentioned there that to keep an eye out for registration for the Children's Summit. And this was confusing because when it came in, I think that we thought it was, I know that we had both the Asset Champions and the Children's Summit are on the same day. So hopefully I meant to register for both, but one of them is just the breakfast. It's 7:30 a.m. to 9. So like for instance, I know I registered for that, but then the Children's Summit is like 10 to 3. It's an all-day thing from Kids in Common. And it's just the state of children in education. It's something that would be great to go to.
Yeah, and if you're interested in going to that, just let Jesus know and he'll sign you up.
Yes, okay. And then I just wanted to say that I was at CMS. Well, I just wanted to let the board know that I was at CMS when they had Daniel Poe had his anti-racism assembly, and he did it by grade level, and then the students all went into their classroom and had a class discussion, and it was really great. The presentation went through definitions of racism and discrimination. He gave concrete examples of things that were happening at the school that had been reported or that were being noticed. And then he really opened the space for the kids to talk, and the kids in that assembly were like, they were feeling it. I mean, it was heavy. They were very quiet. Like there was a cafeteria full of very quiet 7th graders, and their little feet were moving underneath the bleachers and the desks, and it was just very powerful. And he gave that in English and Spanish. And then I happened to be volunteering in the ELD1 class. And so I was in there, and the teacher went through, and he had sent her the slides, and she went through all the slides again, and they had a discussion about each one. And then she said, so tell me, like, one of the slides said, had a prompt, and it said, like, have you experienced racism, racial discrimination at the school? And I was telling Mike about it before. It was pretty crushing. I mean, this room full of kids, they said things like, they tell me I don't belong here. When I speak to them or say hi or something, they just turn around and ignore me. They humiliate us. They tell me they'll get me and my family deported. And, and the teacher was, we were, I think, and all the kids were like, yeah, that's right, so this room full of kids, you can really see that ELD1 classroom is their oasis where they feel very safe with one another. But it was just, I think that it was a great conversation starter, but then I think one of the things that Mr. Poe mentioned was, okay, this assembly and the classroom discussion, that's the education piece. If we see these things happening around the campuses, like graffiti or use of the N-word or other things that we're noticing, there's going to be consequences. Well, then there's this whole other layer there, right? So that was just like my classroom experience this week. And then last but not least, Evan Lowe is going to be at Policy and Pancakes this weekend. And whether or not you're a fan of Evan Lowe, which, I am, but that's okay. But whether or not you're a fan of him, it'd be great to meet him, to chat him up for the future in case anything comes up in the district we want to connect with him about, because he's new to Sunnyvale. He doesn't really know Sunnyvale. His area's been like Cupertino and Campbell mostly before. So he wants to learn about us, and if you happen to be able to go, it's 11 to 1 on Saturday. And that's it for me. Okay.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes, I want to report that I attended and participated in meeting with Mr. Berman for the Legislative Action Committee. And I appreciate the opportunity to share more about our education concerns as a county as a whole. I also have attended several webinars recently, but I wanted to inform the board that I need to leave the meeting because I'm not feeling well right now. It's been a very long day for me, and I send my regrets, but wish you a successful rest of your meeting. So I'll be leaving the meeting at this particular time. Thank you very much for understanding.
Sure, hope you get better. Elaine.
It's been a really long couple of weeks. It's been a really long couple of weeks. I think last time we spoke was before, like a few Fridays ago. And that particular Friday was really difficult because in the morning, 12,000 Google employees were laid off. And I think I spent most of the morning texting my friends to see if they'd been laid off, if their family had been laid off. And then that afternoon was the Monterey Park shooting. And I spent that evening texting my friends down there to see if they were okay. That was right before Lunar New Year. And every time, you know, when there's racialized violence affecting your community and you don't know why, you're on pins and needles for days until somebody tells you. And it was really hard, especially right before Lunar New Year. And then they had the Bay shootings and it was fun. I went to a couple of Fremont Union High School board meetings. One of them I spoke during public comment about ethnic studies. They're doing a shift over to Asian and Asian American authors. I talked about how with some of these experiences that they're going to be covering, it could be difficult or triggering for their students in ways that Shakespeare is not. In 2005, when there was an investigation into the Gulf of Tonkin incident that started the Vietnam War, I was in college, I think, or I was starting college, and that completely shifted my worldview to know that that was partially fabricated. And it's a difficult headspace to be in, and I feel like it would be difficult for high schoolers especially. I went to a city council meeting where I spoke in public comment about, or a lot of people spoke in public comment about the transportation issue from North Sunnyvale to Fremont High School. I spoke specifically about my neighbor who lives in low-income housing and who, when she couldn't make the city bus, had to Uber, which is a lot to ask for a high school student. It can cost hundreds of dollars a month if she has to do that every day, not to mention the time and the commitment it takes to get back. I said that no matter how much we tell kids that they have to stay in school, it's not fair to ask this of them. And we need to recognize that staying in school for some children is a significantly larger hurdle to hurdle than for others, and that's not fair. During the last Fremont Union High School board meeting, which was Tuesday, Belinda Hamilton, who's a former mayor of Sunnyvale and who I know through the Sunnyvale Education Foundation, she said something like, regarding the presentation on the high school feasibility survey, that it looks like a money loser from a business perspective. It's really expensive. But the thing about government is that we're not a business. It doesn't matter how it looks from a business perspective. We have a responsibility and a privilege as elected officials of not doing what makes a profit, but doing what's right. And because it is right, because it's our duty, because we were elected to this position to do what's right. And I really like that. It is the second day of Black History Month. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I got a lot fewer emails about that this year because like over the last couple of years, people were emailing me about it, like buy from Black-owned brands. And I feel like probably from a corporate perspective, maybe that wasn't profitable anymore. But that doesn't matter to us because we're not a business and we have the ability and responsibility to teach things like Black history and anti-racism and ethnic studies, not because it's profitable, and it's not. It's really expensive and it's really hard to buy all these books and develop this curriculum. The Jedi books from the Education Foundation and Rotary, those were expensive. I was like, wow, we got that many books for that much money, but it's necessary and we're doing it because we should and we have to. Because we have the freedom and responsibility and the privilege as government officials to do it. And I love that. I also had several classes with the APOLI cohort, the Asian Pacific American Leadership Institute, and in the last week specifically, we were talking about Asian American history and the history of interracial and interethnic allyship. And I found this quote from Ho Chi Minh, who is the leader of North Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and he wrote it 99 years ago when he lived in Harlem, and he talked then about lynching and how that happens in the US, and especially within the last week with the death of Tyre Nichols. I think it just speaks to how far we've come, but how far we still have left to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emmy. I feel like it feels kind of weird doing something light after that, sorry, but I am going to. So we had the crab feed on Saturday with Rotary. And it was a great event. I'm not a huge fan of crab, but I went and it's probably like half a crab, whatever we've had, but I did the whole experience, and there was lots of people there, and met some women who work at the preschool for the Fremont High School District, and met some other people. And there was tons of people from district office and from school sites who were there supporting the community. So that was just great to see it and great to be a part of it. And then I also just wanted to share on Tuesday, all four of us were able to attend the dinner with SEA, so the Teachers Association, with a couple of their representatives, and it was just a great night to be together, and it was with lots of schools, like school board members from other districts, and their union representatives. So it was a great night to visit and enjoy each other. And that's all.
Thank you. Well, yes, very powerful. Thank you for that. And well, yes, it looks like forever since the last time we reported. We did have our meetings, our annual meeting about all our goals and our strengths as a board together. We did have we did have Leadership Sunnyvale, and then we had our presentation from Mike, our superintendent. It was a great representation, made us feel very proud, and not in comparison, but in comparison, but like when we saw everybody who was there, because the city is bigger than only the Sunnyvale School District. I think we shine very good in that context, and well, probably in every context. Then that was, then we have the governance meetings, then we had a lot of Hoffman Awards news, because then we got together and we decided who were going to be the Hoffman's Award for this year. And well, not the finalists, so we are now in the second process and getting ready to pronounce the 5 finalists for next month. So we're in process. So see everything cool that is happening around the county. Then CCS meeting, and we have a lot of interesting things happening coming from the county superintendent. And last Saturday, we had that great meeting that Bridget organized for the new board members in the county, and I was part of thank you for the invitation, I was part of the panel there to talk about what is experience as a part of the governing board. And again, thank you, Mike, for being there representing us as a leader of our community. And then during this short period, we also had some visits to we were at the council meeting, the three of us were there at the council meeting and actually, well, the transportation to the north side. We also talk and in public comments to ask for a more a focus shelter for children and families inside our district. And why it's important, because we have a lot of kids who end up in the shelter that we have, because it's recommended for them not to go farther away. And there are so many good examples of very good family shelters in our county, but our kids will not end over there. Our kids in the city and our district, but will end in the shelter that we have, which is very good because it's very easy for everybody to be able to find a shelter. But again, it's a congregated setting that, because it's very open to anyone in any condition, is not a safe space for children. It still is better than the streets if that's the only option that a kid in Sunnyvale will have, but definitely not the best one. So we were able to talk, Bria and I, focus on that particular item, and then they approved a study for this year for the possibility of a specific family and children place for shelter this year. And they also ended up, and we are also talking and asking for that position. There was a proposition for a position in the city, within the city, that will focus on services. So that was very good, and we keep moving forward with those meetings. Actually, today we had another one with the group talking about children in shelter in our city and our students in shelter. Then we did have other thing that they were saying in our visit to Bishop School. Well, you know, it's a lovely school. Actually, now that we're going to be talking about, you know, the things that we have built and done for the community, it was, as usual, very refreshing to see a campus that is so active and so bright and has so many good things happening around. They were, one of the things when we asked, like, you know, your wish list, how can we work together, how can we help you? They were asking for the same, they have to stop all the English learners and newcomer and everything classes during the LPAC, during the testing time, because it takes too much time and too much resources. And they think like, well, that's kind of like, yeah, we have to do it and it's very important, but it takes so much time to do it that we need to stop educating kids that may need this month, because this month we are just getting together and doing all the process necessary to be successful in the testing. And it will be good to find a good answer for this, whatever it is. I don't know if more people, because it's mostly a 1 month need, but you know, like what can we do so we don't have to stop for this. So that was one of the biggest asks that they had. Well, and then of course the meeting with the county teachers and the CTA that we got invited by our SC, yes. SIA, yeah. That was very interesting. As usual, it's always a good opportunity to see what's going on in other counties and to be able to share with our teachers and our educators. Let's see, visit to the shelter, visit to the school. Yesterday, I went to visit Fremont High School and for the career day, and was able to help in one of the classes for the English learners. Again, there is always, when you go to the classes, when you have kids who are newcomers and they are just, arriving in high school in 11th year, and you ask them to graduate and they just came to the country 1 month or 3 months ago, and you try to inspire them to study. And I was talking about all the but you can go to college, and there is this program, and there is this all the city college, and then you can start exploring this. And But then at the same time, the teacher was telling me like, well, a lot of these kids, they just arrive. If they don't have enough English, they probably won't be allowed to go to the city college and to try the other things that kids in another classroom will be able to try and explore and be able to do to further their education. So that was got me a little sad about that. Yeah, I think that's a lot of what we did this week. Oh, and then the challenge team. There is always, they had a lot of news about, there is going to be one active day with do you remember what it was? That they're inviting everybody in the community because it's about being active with the children. And then remember that the girl who did boxing was going to be helping.
Well, I think they're doing a big boxing tournament somewhere. I
Yeah.
think that was it. It was at the studio. But yeah.
Yeah, so they have a lot of feed programs for children that the police gives. And those are very good services to promote and help. And yeah, I think that's kind of what has been happening on top of everything that Elaine said that was a very kind of heavy month. Yeah, thank you. And Mike.
So first of all, I want to thank this board. I'm not sure you're aware of the impact you are having in the district in terms of becoming an anti-racist school district. So the comments that each of you made in different ways from different perspectives matter. They give permission to people like Principal Poe to do the leadership that he did. They give permission to teachers in the classroom to teach about anti-racism, to share their own experiences as you have. Don't underestimate the power of that. When I meet with other superintendents and I talk about the work we're doing, the question I often get, I got this just last week in a superintendent's group, where's your board on this? And the answer that I give is that our board is leading on that. So thank you for that leadership. Thank you for sharing those stories because they do matter in the work that we're doing. So along that line, the Equity Summit is coming up on February 15th. We're putting together the program on that. The topic is disrupting racism in Sunnyvale School District. And again, this type of leadership that you're demonstrating contributed to that very direct message. We're putting together a problem of practice that we're going to attack in this meeting. It first started out in a deficit lens, something about the underachievement of Hispanic and Latino English language learners. And we said, no, that is not the problem. The problem is that our system is not serving our English language learners, particularly those who are Hispanic and Latino. So we're going to refine that, but that's going to be the problem. That's the focus of that work. We're working harder and harder every year to make sure that we're elevating the voices of families and students in that, and whatever the opposite of that is for staff, because we really want to hear from our community. And we're already thinking about next year's, even though we haven't had this year's, about what are some changes we can do in the format to make sure that we're accomplishing that goal. So I'm very excited about that, and that's coming up. I got to visit Ellis School and meet with the principal as part of my 101, and she was very excited to, at the end, can we do a tour of the new facility there? So I was able to do that with Brant, and he'll talk a little bit about that. I can't wait for you to visit it. The first thing is just going behind the screen and seeing the new parking lot. If you're familiar with that neighborhood, that's amazing. Just the drive-through and the parking lot is going to make a huge difference in that neighborhood. And then visiting the classrooms in the building, you're going to be, it's what a deserving for our community. It's going to be fabulous. And anyway, Brant's going to talk more about that, so I don't want to steal his thunder. I also attended the Fremont High School District special board meeting this week, talking about the possibility of a high school in North Sunnyvale. And then right after that, the city council meeting on Moffett Park. I want to be, make sure that our message as a board is really clear, because I can tell from the city council that they're conflating some things, two very important issues, right? So there's one issue that's a longstanding 40-year issue about the need for a high school in North Sunnyvale. That's one issue. That's related to Moffett Park, but it's not the same issue, okay? The reason I'm concerned about it is because when the city council individual members were talking about a school in Moffett Park, they were thinking in terms of a high school and not thinking in terms of there is an absolute critical need for an elementary, probably a K through 8, TK through 8 school in Moffett Park. So we as a school district and a school board, we need to be, whenever you see a city council member, make sure you're drawing that distinction. Two very important messages, but as Sunnyvale School District, it's critical that there's a school, land set aside for a school in in Moffett Park. So we're gonna be talking more about that. I think the city staff gets it. We met with them separately, Brent and I did this week. I think they understand, but I wanna make sure that the city council gets it, because 1,200 students crossing 237 is not good, and there's nowhere for them to go. They're certainly not gonna go to Fairwood, who's here, and there's certainly not enough room at Lakewood. There's not enough room at Columbia. We need a school. And I think the staff gets it. We wanna make sure that the city and the community get that. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. We're gonna talk about actually both of those issues a little bit later today in a little bit more detail. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one more thing. And I don't remember the title, so Isabel, you're gonna have to help me out, but Isabel is Director at Large, is that the right title?
Mm-hmm.
Isabel was just voted Director at Large for the California Latino School Board Association. Like, I'm trying not to document there. That's exciting.
Thank you.
And now we can move on.
Okay, so now we're moving to item 5, a comment from the Sunnyvale Education Association. If there is an official representative online, or well, I don't see anyone here, but online, please raise the hand icon if you wish to talk. No one? Okay, thank you. And then we move to 6, comments from the California School Employees Association. If there is an official representative online, please use the raise hand if you wish to speak.
Oscar's here, but he didn't raise his hand, so I don't know.
Oscar, do you want to talk? Okay, so he's not raising the hand. Okay. So we move to item 7, comments from the public. So this is the time to comment about things that are not on the agenda and agendized items. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item or of interest to the public. However, provision of the Brown Act Government Code 54954.2a and point 3 preclude any action being taken or any item not appearing on the posted agenda. In plain speaking terms, the board can only receive information during this time. We cannot speak to or about items that are not in our agenda. If you would like to comment on any item that is not on the agenda and you are in person, please submit a card. And if you are online, please use the raise hand feature now. And we do have some cards, but not for this item 7. We have for further along in the agenda. No cards over there either? Okay. Anybody online? Okay, so we don't have anyone online. So we can move to item 8, which is presentations. And our first presentation today will be item 8A, presentation on Fairwood Explorer School. And for that, the contact people today is, well, Rachel Romander is our
main contact today, and the vice principal. Thank you for coming.
Sounds great. Thank you for having us. So I'm here, Rochelle Romander, as the principal of Fairwood Explorer, and I have with me Ms. Shana Reel, who's our assistant principal, and we'll be joining together to present today. There is a clicker catastrophe today, so when I do little weird signals to signal Jesus to click to the next slide, you'll know that I'm not like having a problem, I'm just signaling to move on. So go ahead and move on. So as we look at how we want to set the stage for the year, we thought about what our school site goals would be. And we decided to try to communicate them in a way that not only conveyed the path that we are on, but also in what space of the path we are on for each one of our goals. So our first goal area was, we have 4 different goal areas here, and we've kind of classified them based on where we are in the journey. So in our first area is mathematics instruction, and we're at an awareness level right now for that goal. We have culturally responsive teaching and learning, where we're at an exploration and experimentation stage. For our our English language development, we are doing a deep dive. And for our guided reading, we're in the refinement stage. So I'll be talking a little bit more about what each of those things means as we go through the presentation. So one thing that we wanted to make sure we highlighted is that as we go through each of these goal areas, we are using a couple of different tools to help guide the decisions we make. The first in the purple band there is the California Standards for the Teaching Profession. And so our teachers every year, they select their own goals for their own professional development. We encourage them to consider our site goals, but sometimes as a professional, your goals don't necessarily completely align with our site goals. And so they have that option to kind of choose the goals that are going to be most applicable to them. The second is the culturally responsive teaching walkthrough tool. So this is something that the district has been using as we walk through classrooms to give feedback on culturally responsive teaching practices. And so you're going to see through the presentation sometimes that we highlight the use of that tool or how teachers have represented that. And the final one is the Ready for Rigor framework. And so looking at rigorous teaching practices and ensuring that we're supporting our students through that work rigorously with a culturally responsive lens is another area that we're looking at, and that's our pink band. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, and we'll talk about mathematics in our awareness stage. Go ahead. And so this is our beginning of the year. That's what the BOY acronym stands for, beginning of year, and our fall data for our kindergarten math proficiency. And so I tried to kind of correlate it so that it's kind of a lighter colored band and then a darker colored band for beginning of the year light, darker is the fall. So each of these is 1 point in that. What we're seeing is that kind of trend up for most of our areas. We had one little weird section there with our scatter 1-to-1 correspondence, but we think we kind of identified a few things that might have contributed to that. But overall, we're seeing that those students are kind of trending up as the year goes, which is good news, especially since these are such finite skills. Looking at the next slide, we have our comparison for beginning of the year and fall data for NWEA. And I recognize that this is a very busy slide, but the thing that we like to really notice, first grade is always a little tricky because we give 2 different types of tests. We give a screener at the beginning of the year, and then we give the full growth assessment, which is more comprehensive in the fall. So first grade's a little tricky because it doesn't report out in the same bands that the other grade levels do. So that's why there's some empty parts in theirs, because those are the bands that were not reported at the beginning of year. But what's good to recognize is that for the most part, we're seeing that trend of the red, orange, yellow spectrums are decreasing in the fall data, and the green and blue bands are increasing in the fall data. The one area where that doesn't happen, if you might notice, is the first grade data. And that's because in the beginning of the year data, there was not a green band. So some of the students that were in the blue band were actually in the green band. So that's why there's that weird little dip there. All right, we'll go ahead to the next one. And so we wanted to get not only our perspective, I mean, we can look at data and we can talk to our teachers and we can think about what we see in the classroom, but most importantly, we want to look at how are students thinking and feeling about school. So we've got some quotes from some kids. Go ahead and click. We've got, I enjoy doing real math, like solving equations, especially during exploration. For those not familiar with Fairwood Explorer, exploration is a time that our kindergarten students do really hands-on activities to show the application of the work that they're doing. So that was Morgan, one of our kindergartners. Go ahead and click. And that connects to our California standards for the teaching profession, connecting subject matter to meaningful real life contexts. Go ahead and click again. We have, I enjoy working with partners to learn math from Kealoha, one of our third graders. And if we click again, we'll see that that connects to working in authentically communal ways, which is one of our culturally responsive practices. Clicking again, we see our teacher uses lots of pictures and charts to help us learn math. That's from Shenyue, from one of our second graders, and that connects to using anchor charts to help students remember processes. Looking at our last one, we are given a lot of different ways to solve math problems, and we can choose the one that works best for us. And when we struggle, our teacher helps us work our way through instead of giving us the answer, from Emily. And those connect to planning instruction that incorporates strategies to meet learning needs of all students, balance giving students both care and push, and one-on-one instructional conversations. So our students are seeing evidence of us putting these practices into place, and that is really important to us. Moving on, some of the things that we've done to help those things happen are we incorporated the math module lessons that were provided by the district office at the start of the year into our professional development for teachers. We also gave our teachers a math survey. As many of you probably are aware, mathematics instruction has been in a little bit of a flux recently because the state has been really slowly going through a process of updating their framework for mathematics. And so we've been kind of waiting to get that new framework, but also knowing that we needed to change some instructional practices. And so teachers have kind of gone into some different directions to try to best meet the needs of their students and find curriculum that meets both of those needs. And so we did a math survey for our teachers to find out, where are you? What curriculum are you finding success with? What curriculum are you interested in trying? What types of activities or things do you feel are most successful for your students? And what types of things are you looking to do in the future? And like I said, this is our awareness goal. We as instructional leaders need to build our awareness of where our teachers are and what they need. And our teachers are building their awareness of where we're going so that they can start planning their own support, or what they need to do in order to get there. We purchased and distributed related math manipulatives to our teachers based on some of the things that they've identified that they need and the math modules that we did at the start of the year. We had a district-wide grade level meeting and a staff development day devoted to looking at mathematics instruction, both from a lens of using math games and connecting that to English language development, and using math manipulatives to help students really understand conceptually what they're doing in math. Every one of our grade level teachers is participating in a coaching cycle around mathematics, which has been a great way to build some momentum in that area. And our math intervention groups have started for our 4th and 5th graders working with the DSS TOSA. That's the Direct Student Services TOSA. So next steps, some things that we're thinking of moving into for future steps, either this year or into next year. We want to further explore math centers. Our teachers have been really good at incorporating literacy centers to help students practice concepts, and we want to mimic the success we're seeing in reading into math. And so we're looking at different opportunities for building math centers out at our school. We want to explore more effective instructional strategies for math and reflect on our current practices. So using that Sunnyvale School District vision for math, we want to look at where are we. And we did that with our math survey. Where are we in terms of the practices we're currently using? And now we want to try to support those practices that teachers felt less comfortable with. And finally, we want to transition from some of those rote learning practices that we still are seeing a little bit in our mathematics instruction into more of that inquiry and exploration study. Next slide. Our second area of focus was culturally responsive teaching and learning. Go ahead. And this is our exploration and experimentation year for that, meaning that we built awareness last year by bringing in some professional development to build common language and to look at what types of practices are we looking at when we talk about culturally responsive teaching. We use our panorama data to help guide some of this. And so this just reflects where our students are in terms of how they feel that we are doing with culturally responsive teaching practices. Some of these are things that have been practices that we feel really comfortable about, but some of the practices, as you can see, are things that we have some room for growth. And so we want to make sure that we are being responsive to what our students are saying. One of the areas is talking about race. So very interested in hearing about what Mr. Poe did over at Columbia Middle School, because I think that's something that we can then transform into an elementary module that we could potentially do with our students. And then also looking at when important things happen in the world around race and different cultural groups, are we talking about them at school? And that was another area where our students said we have some room for improvement there. All right, moving on. So what are our students actually saying? They're telling us, we'll start with the first one, I would like others to learn more about my culture, our foods, our traditions, and our music. That was Priya, one of our first graders. And that ties to using knowledge of students to engage them in learning. If we're not providing opportunities for our students to share who they are and to learn about who they are, we can't engage them as well as we could if we knew more about them. Next. It's also one of our standards for the teaching profession, creating learning environments that promote student learning, reflect diversity, encourage constructive and productive conversations. So that's a reason to bring that in. One of our students gave us some accolades. She said, pardon me, I like that my teacher includes our names in math problems because then I want to read them and complete the problems. And this ties to connecting new content to culturally relevant examples and metaphors from students' community and everyday lives. So students want to see themselves reflected in what they're learning. Moving on. The school does a great job of welcoming students of all cultures and teaching us, she's bringing it, I see it, thank you so much, and teaching us about other cultures. I think it would be great for students to present about their culture at community meetings or class. That was Julian, who's actually one of our newcomers in 3rd grade. And so he's telling us that we need to make space for student voice and agency. So as we think about these things, we want to start learning from our students how we can better have those conversations and give them that voice. Go ahead. So some of the action steps that we've taken so far, as an administrative team, we've completed 3 rounds of culturally responsive walkthroughs. We went into classrooms, we looked for culturally responsive practices, we looked at how do we discuss those practices, how do we then give feedback to teachers so that we can continue to support them in improving their practices and make ourselves better aware of what's happening in the classrooms regarding culturally responsive practices. We've done outreach to our Fairwood families to begin our multicultural team again. We had a multicultural team pre-pandemic. When the pandemic took place, many of the teams that we had in place, there wasn't as good of an opportunity for them to be active on our campus, but we are now restarting those teams. And we've been partnering with the PBIS team because we want to take the PBIS work that we've done and make sure that we're using a lens of culturally responsive teaching and learning in the way that we developed our PBIS program. And then finally, the Sunnyvale Education Foundation grant that is offered to schools every year, we use that grant to purchase culturally diverse literature for every classroom, plus bilingual books in Spanish and English for all of our classrooms, to help build that literacy, that awareness, that library of books that represent the students within our classrooms. So next steps, we want to explore opportunities to provide students with more agency and voice. That suggestion from Duvian is a gem. We want to look at how could we really take that and make it go somewhere so that our students have an opportunity to really have that agency to express themselves and to share about themselves and their lives. We've also begun launching cultural forums to provide an opportunity for our families from different cultural groups to share their insights, their hopes, and their dreams for their children and their education. So by offering affinity groups for our cultural forums, we allow families to be able to kind of speak from that lens and to really share what their perspective is on the educational program. I'm going to turn it over to Shana, who's going to tell you about our last two goals.
All right, good evening, hello. All right. So one of the next areas of our goals, this is our deep dive, and that is into English language development. So here you can see, these are from data points that we took from the beginning of the year as well as the fall. We used our Fontes and Pinnell data for our first and second graders, and we had the NWA reading that was used for our third, fourth, and fifth graders. And you can see here that there is a significant difference between all of our students and our students that have been identified as English learners. So this data gave us kind of, yep, this is where we're gonna go. This is where we're gonna use this information, and we're gonna do this as a deep dive as an entire staff. And so I'm gonna share a little bit about what we've been doing. So one of the things, again, we spoke with our students and to get some insight and have them share with us. So Giovanni was one of our fifth graders, and he really enjoyed that this year, his fifth grade class. Their teacher used a podcast during this designated ELD time to kind of engage them. And then he really was excited that he then got to go into a small group with other students, and he worked on retelling and discussing the podcast in the small group. So he really found that engaged him a lot during designated ELD. And again, you can see this one ties into one of the areas that we're using to kind of collect this information with the culturally responsive teaching. It's giving students, again, voice, giving them opportunities to discuss what they're learning around a lesson. Here we see Duvian, again, with a quote, and he's really feeling supported, that his teacher is supporting him as he's transitioning and learning in class and coming every day. And he's using an iPad to be able to communicate with his peers, other staff members, as well as his teacher, so that he is continuing to learn. And that is using our CSTPs. And again, we're looking at how are we addressing those individual needs of each of our students. And then we have Nick. He is one of our fourth grade students, and he's just really excited that he has opportunities to read books in Spanish. He's able to do that at home, he's able to do that at school, and he knows that this is helping him to get better at reading, and it really makes him excited. Here again, this is how we're looking at rigor at our school and how we're giving kids opportunities to be owners within their own learning. So how are we continuing to build this and do this deep dive within our school and within our staff? So we've had, so far this year, we've done 2 specific staff development days. We've had opportunities to coordinate with members of the district office. Some of the district coaches have helped us develop that. During this time, we've taken a deep dive within the standards, within looking at the other components, and the teachers have then had the opportunity to create specific designated ELD units. We've also used some of our teacher learning days to be able to do this work as well. And you can see that they've had identifying specific topics using their pacing guide and planning guides throughout the year to really develop some very targeted agendas and plans. We also provided each grade level team a half day of release time for the grade level to come together and utilize that time to plan. They had done this after some of the staff development, so they were able to use some of the new knowledge that they've had to then really deep dive into creating those unit plans. We also have had the opportunity to give some of our long-term English language learners, as well as our newcomers, kind of an additional dose of ELD during the day. They get designated ELD in their classroom within their classroom teacher, but we've had the opportunity to be able to provide them some extra time and some more small group time to be able to develop those English skills. We are also having our grade levels and teachers do coaching cycles around ELD, so they are working with our instructional coach this year, and several of our grade levels have completed those cycles, and we have several that are in progress right now. One of the things that we brought back to Fairwood, this was a pre-pandemic opportunity, we've been able to bring that back this year, is our Teachers Observing Teachers. We do call that TOTS. One of the areas that when we participate in this is we have teachers identify some English language learners in their classroom. So when teachers are coming in to observe, it's really about we're observing the students in the classroom. And we want to have a lens on what are our English language learners doing in the classroom. And so we do ask, and we provide a name or two of actual specific students to kind of, hey, just take a notice of what are they doing. As we continue this work, some of our next steps, we are going to be doing 2 additional rounds of those Teachers Observing Teachers. We're hoping to be able to provide another half-day release for the grade levels to be able to continue to develop the units so that they'll have a full plethora of units to be able to go through the entire year. We have an additional day in April for our Teacher Learning Day that we will be also utilizing to continue to build our information and our learning around ELD. And as we continue to work with our language review teams, and as we continue to reflect, we're also looking at how are we getting students to speak? How are we using beyond the text questions? And how are we gradually releasing those scaffolds? One of the things that we've noticed in some of our conversations at the LRTs was the kids are really good and they're using the scaffolds, but sometimes we're finding that those scaffolds are maybe a little too tight. And it's like, how do we bring them off so that the students are more independent and that they are moving along for themselves? So that was our deep dive. So an area that we are continuing to work with, and we've been doing a really great progress at Fairwood, is our guided reading. And so this is our refinement area. Here again, you can take a look at and see, this is our data. We have, again, the beginning of the year data as well as our fall data. We were using the FNP for our primary grades, and then we have the NWEA data for our 3rd through 5th grades.
I have a clarifying question. When you say fall, what is that?
Fall is the information that was taken during the fall benchmark window, which is at the end of trimester 1, which would be around early November.
Thank you.
No problem. So again, you can see that we have a look at here. We've separated the data out into all students as well as our English language learners, because we are still continuing to take a look at how are our English language learners progressing in their literacy skills. And so we have some areas that we are continuing to work, and we're using our guided reading to help us continue to make that progress. Again, we took some opportunities to speak with our students about how is reading and how is literacy going for them. So we had Adrit, who's one of our 1st graders, and he loves that reading workshop time is fun. He likes that he gets to read with a friend, whether that be a partner in classroom or one of the stuffies that is available in the classroom. And he likes that he's able to switch books, which means he's being provided choice within his reading. And this is creating a culture that is very supportive around routines and rituals, and it's providing an engaging opportunity. We have Nick, also one of our 4th graders, again sharing that he likes guided reading because my teacher really provides me an opportunity to learn new words. It's a small group time. I have a time to be with the teacher, and she's helping me grow. And this is able to, as we learn those new words, they're able to think about how are we code switching, again, thinking about how we're culturally responsive and learning within our teaching. Keo Loa is our 3rd graders. She's enjoying the book clubs. She's enjoying that they got to choose their books, and then she's enjoying that she gets to talk about those books. She gets to get with a group of other students and they get to talk about what they've read. She's also learning new skills. She likes how her teacher has provided an opportunity to use sticky notes to be able to identify, this is where I'm going to start and this is where I'm going to stop. So it's just a skill that I can use. And using those sticky notes, again, that is providing some more rigor for the students, opportunities to be able to process what is happening and what they're learning. Again, when we're providing opportunities for students to think out loud, we're creating an intellectually safe educational environment. We have Kasia, and she really honed in on, for her, she was able to participate in one of our literacy intervention groups. And she felt really good about that because she was getting better. She noticed herself and she was improving, and that made her feel good. That gave her confidence. And so that was what she was able to share with us. And this is just an opportunity for kids to be able to have opportunities to get feedback. How are you growing? How are you progressing? And they were able to learn that. And Emily, one of our fifth graders, she loves that the teacher uses models to be able to read and write and use details and just learn more and take a deep dive. And she's really kind of honing in on that spirit of inquiry that we want to see students really embracing. So what have we been doing? So this is kind of building off some of the other information that we have shared. We are doing those teachers observing teachers. The very first round was the opportunity for teachers to go in, and they did specifically observe teachers delivering those guided reading lessons. And we were focusing on our multilingual students, as we shared earlier, that the teachers did identify some of their English learners in the class. We've been able to do walkthroughs, and then we've been able to use the culturally responsive teaching tool for our observations, and this has been able for us to be able to provide feedback as to what we are seeing. And this is an area that if teachers, they are continuing to get coaching support around their guided reading practice. As mentioned before, we're going to continue. We have 2 more teachers observing teachers planned. One of the areas that we're going to kind of dig into is looking at how can we explore rigor and accountability? How can we kind of put that within our reading centers and make them a little more robust? And then as we are, and it is also within the district, we are looking at phonics instruction and resources. This is an area that teachers have expressed that they'd like to see some possibly new ideas or some changes. And so we're hearing that. And so we're helping to kind of do that process as well. So as we transition, those were our 4 goal areas. One of the other aspects that we house at Fairwood is the Independent Study Program. We were here last year and sharing about that. And so we're going to share a little bit about that this year. We're going to take a look at the enrollment. At the top of the slide, you'll notice the enrollment last year. We started the 21-22 school year with 170 students. We finished last year with 60 students. Now, as we move into the 22-23 school year, currently at this date right now, we have 3 students enrolled. We have a kinder student who just joined us in January. We have 2 additional students that started with us in August. They were carryovers from the previous school year. One of them is in 8th grade, the other is a 5th grade student. We have had as we utilize and have enrollments within the long-term study program, in some instances we might think about long-term independent study. It's also for short-term, because we've had some students that have come in, they've utilized the program. We had 2 6th grade students. They utilized the program, they were able to kind of get back in after a medical, and then they were able to transition back into the classroom. We had another student that this was an opportunity to see if this was going to provide them an educational option for them to see if it would work. The student tried it. It was determined that this was not a fit. But we are glad that the opportunity and the option was available for them. So that was enrollment. Currently, as we look at our staff, we have 2 elementary teachers that are housed at Fairwood. They are on site with us. They each of them has 1 student. One has the kinder, one has the 5th grader. They do a 30-minute morning meeting with the student online, and then they are continuing the weekly one-on-one hour meeting. Each of those students come in person to Fairwood. The teachers are also then utilized, because there's some time available, as subs at those other school sites within the district. We know that subbing has been a need, and so we've been able to utilize that to help fill that need. They are also helping to provide, which is an opportunity, to run some reading and ELD intervention groups at Fairwood. I think I had mentioned that we'd had some opportunities. Some of our students mentioned they liked their intervention groups. We do also have one teacher currently working at the middle school, and they are working with the one student that is in the middle school. They follow the same format as with a 30-minute morning Zoom meeting, as well as the 1 hour in-person meeting once a week. This teacher also is supporting with subbing at SMS. They are also pushing into some 6th grade classrooms. And the supervision for this teacher, as they are not on site at Fairwood this year, has switched over to being supervised by the SMS administration. And so that is how independent study is looking as a staffing perspective. We are continuing to utilize the online program Edgenuity, but this year we've also kind of made a shift, especially within the within the writing and social studies, that we're using district adopted curriculum. We've had the opportunity, which has been a real plus for us, when our kindergarten student entered in January, the IS teacher is working in tandem with the kinder teacher to utilize district curriculum for the student, and it is concurrent with what's happening in the classroom. And this is with the hope that when the student transitions back, as we expect them to return at some point this school year, they will have been continuing to do what was happening in their classroom. So when the transition comes, it'll be a much more smoother and consistent return. And that is how independent study is looking at the moment.
And of course, Fairwood has the Fairwood Explorer program as well, and so we wanted to end on that note. Just a quick update about Fairwood Explorer. We want to really highlight the Fairwood Alliance's support this year. The district put in a new policy that any chaperone on a field trip needed to have fingerprinting, and we are so proud that the Fairwood Alliance offered to pay for fingerprinting for any Fairwood family member who wanted to get that done so that they could chaperone. And so a big kudos to the Fairwood Alliance for doing that. It's an integral part of our Fairwood Explorer program, and them stepping up to put that into place allowed us to put our field trips and get them going very quickly without missing a beat. We do have 268 approved family volunteers this year, and 195 of those volunteers have been fingerprinted to support field trips. So we're really happy to see that level of volunteering coming back. It's been a little tricky. There are still some family members who may not feel as comfortable coming in due to pandemic concerns and things like that. But we really did see the families coming back in quite a large way this year. We do realize though, one kind of challenge that we've seen is that for our newer families that started with Fairwood during the pandemic, we're recognizing that their volunteer rate numbers are not quite as high as what we would have expected. And so we've been talking about some strategies that we're going to use to provide them with some additional support and training on volunteering in order to help them feel more comfortable with coming in and doing the volunteering. Typically we do that in their kindergarten and first grade year to really build them up, but because they weren't here on campus during those years, we're realizing that that might be an area of discomfort for them. Moving on, we wanted to just highlight some of those amazing field trips and presentations that really highlight that hands-on learning experience. So this is our 5th graders who've already been to Angel Island this year. We also have, if you'll keep going, the San Jose Museum of Art. We've had a couple of grade levels who have gone there for different programs. We had a coding presentation at our school site with some of the Minecraft coders who came and did a visit to the classroom. Our students went out to Foothill Park. They've gone to the Tech Museum. You might now start noticing that all their faces are falcons because we want to protect privacy. Author Mary Pope Osborne did a virtual visit with one of our grade levels. We had experiences of going to In-N-Out to learn about goods and services, as well as a visit from our another author, Joanna Ho. that was arranged by the district's library coach. Pizza My Heart, another goods and services field trip for our students. A waste management presentation so that our kindergartners could learn about the community helpers in our neighborhood. And the San Jose Center for Performing Arts, they went to see the Nutcracker. So these amazing hands-on experiences that take the students out into the community, out into the world to experience all of the things that they're studying within the school environment really helps to build those connections, and it provides opportunities that not all of our students would have the ability to do on their own. And so we're really proud of that. So that's the end of our presentation for today. We're open up to questions if you have any.
So at this moment, if there is any member of the public who would like to speak to this item, A in particular, if there is anyone in person that would like to speak on that, I don't have any card, but just in case. And is there anyone from the public? Please raise your hand feature on Zoom. Okay. Well, since none, so please, we can start with the board comments. Nancy left, but so Brigitte, you want to start? Well, I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments that want to start.
I want you to lay more up here with her computer and her mic. Go. So I was an English language learner. I was reclassified very early. I'm not sure I needed extra support because I already spoke English at home with my parents, and I also just happened to speak Vietnamese. Are you finding that a lot of these children are captured within the English language, like initial testing, and do they go out? What is your rate of these long-term English learners, and do you see that reflected in these charts here? I see I see the numbers. I would have expected maybe for children in my situation who have dropped off after kindergarten or for first grade, but I'm not sure I see that.
Yeah, so when the students first enroll and they take the LPAC assessment, they it's at that point determined whether their English skills are proficient enough to be initially reclassified. And so if that is the case, then they don't ever participate in the English language development program. They are able to just kind of go with the regular instructional program. We do occasionally see students that maybe they had some discomfort when they took that initial assessment. Maybe they didn't feel, because the assessment has to happen within the first 30 days of enrollment. So for some students, now you're getting pulled into a room, it's done one-on-one with someone you don't know very well, and they're asking you all these questions. So we do recognize that for some students, that can be really intimidating. And unfortunately, it could impact the score. Some of the things that we try to do to address that, we try to make sure that the students know who the person is before they get pulled by that person. It's not perfect, like I said, it has to happen in 30 days, so that's really hard. But we do try to put that into place. Maybe the person who's going to assess is just kind of walks through the room a few times, introduces themselves, checks in with groups. Maybe they do a read aloud in the classroom, things like that. When we look at our LTEL numbers, we do see that there is an interesting percentage of students who actually probably were learning English at a much younger age through a childcare system, a daycare system, something like that, and that really English is their dominant and stronger language. Many of those students, what we see is that they are students that have qualified for IEPs. And as a result, their designated learning disability may be impacting their ability to reclassify. And so we're constantly looking for ways that we can support our students and try to take that bit out of the equation, but sometimes it does impact. And in particular, with our current 5th grade cohort, we do have a number of students that is the case, that they could potentially reclassify, but maybe are struggling because of other factors. We also see that sometimes the numbers are reflective of influxes of newcomers. And I think across the Sunnyvale School District, I've heard all of the principals talk about a very high number of newcomers coming in upper grades this year. And that certainly has been the case for Fairwood. This year we have, at this point, 5, I was gonna say, is it 4 or 5 now? 5 newcomers that have come in the upper grades recently. All of them are learning English as a start right now. So they have not had English in where they were doing schooling previously. Many of them have very strong first language skills. So they've definitely had good quality schooling and all of that, and they're picking up English very quickly, but then they have to take this assessment that doesn't take into account that I haven't had education in English previously. So there are a number of factors that can sometimes make the numbers look a certain way, but when we really dig in and look at who are those individual students, there's a bigger story to be told, for sure.
I think it's common within the district that the long-term English language learners are generally Spanish speaking. Is that true at Fairwood?
That would be true at Fairwood. Yeah, so when we looked at how we could utilize our independent study teachers who had some time in their schedules, the very first thing we thought of was, let's give our LTEL students, our potential LTEL students, long-term English learners, an additional layer of support. Because, and then we dug in, what are the areas of the LPAC that are most difficult for these students? And typically it's the writing section or the reading section. But we also saw the speaking section as being an area of need for some of our students, which was shocking because speaking to these students, they are very, very eloquent in English, but they may not be able to speak to a prompt as well as they speak in terms of conversational language. And so those are some of the things we took into account as we looked at what types of activities those students should be doing in that extra dose group. Yeah.
I'm curious as a layperson, what different supports an English learner needs versus someone who has a different learning disability? I mean,
oftentimes, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, on the surface, it seems like getting extra help would be good, but I feel like there's tailoring there.
Yeah, so oftentimes there is a lot of overlap. We see that for both groups of students, visual representations can sometimes be very helpful. We see that for both groups, having frames and models is very helpful. Having anchor charts that they can refer back to is very helpful. So there are a lot of overlaps in terms of what both of those groups might need. When we look at our English learners, we recognize that oftentimes it's their language development that is the most key component. So whereas for some of our other students, there may be other factors contributing if they have a learning disability or some other reason why they might be struggling in school that we would need to address. But with our language learners, it's a language need. And so when we look at that, we look at how are we giving them authentic opportunities for practice? And that's one of our key recognitions with all of the ELD work that we've done this year has been, we need more opportunities for authentic English practice, and we need to remove the scaffolds as we go. Because that was a big aha for our team. We took a look at the LPAC, the types of language demands for the LPAC, and the teacher said, I know my kids can do this with these supports, but if they didn't have those supports, I'm not sure if they would be successful. And so they have the skills, but we need to make sure that we're giving them that ownership and that agency to know you can do it without the support. Yeah.
I just want to say congratulations on your California Distinguished School.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, I have a question. So, is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the independent study teachers, it does not sound like a lot of time with the students. You know, kids are all about being fair. Teachers are all about things being fair. So I'm just wondering, like, so I love it that they're doing subbing things. I love it that they're working with kids. When they go in and they work in a classroom or they pull a group, is it like sort of, are they working in partners with the teaching teams? Are they working in partners with the grade levels? Like, who's kind of managing what they're doing with the kids so that everyone's like not only on the same page, but like happy about it?
So we've had, good question. So when we decided to utilize the 2 teachers, we took a look at kind of the needs. Similarly, we looked at the data across the grade levels, similarly to the data that our DSS TOSA was using as well. And then we kind of had said, well, one teacher can kind of help support some of our primary grades. The other teacher can help support some of our the upper grades. Those 2 teachers now go to those grade level meetings. They collaborate with those teachers. They continually talk with them about the progress of their students. We also set up the same model for those 2 teachers that our DSS TOSA utilizes. They follow the same similar 6-week rotation for an intervention group. They use pre and post data. We all sit down together to take a look at that data and then discuss whether or not the student is making progress. Do they need another round, or is the student ready to move on? Who are our next students that we can now bring in? So it is a continuing process that we are all a part of as we utilize them in this capacity.
Okay, and then 2 things I wanted to mention. When we did go to Bishop, there were 2 other things you might have liked, which was, well, for sure their library was with the books. I mean, I can't wait to see Fairwood's library because the kids were like really lit up about that. But one of them was the 2nd and 3rd grade teams had worked on a hands-on workshop where they had parent volunteers come in and do like a little field trip in the library, which was really cool. How is it going with the sharing? Now that we're all back and like everyone's like, you know, knock on wood, the variants are a little bit that way behind us, hopefully. How's it going with the cross-site collaboration? Are you still working with other sites? Because I think Fairwood has a lot to offer and share, and you've traditionally had a lot of success with your hands-on learning and like warming people up to project-based learning and stuff.
Yeah, I would say that is an area for us to continue to grow in at this point. Our teachers, I was just talking to a teacher yesterday, and she expressed that we're doing a little fun challenge around Fairwood right now. These lovely buttons are hiding all over campus, and our teachers have to find them, and they get a special prize if they have the most by the end of the challenge. And one of the teachers, as we were talking about it, because she's very into it, she's got them all over her lanyard right now. She said, last year I didn't have the capacity for this. Last year, like, I love these games that you do, but I did not have the capacity. And I think that statement is really reflective of where our staff was last year. It was like, we're trying to get our feet back underneath us. We're trying to get back into the rhythm of things. Very, very honestly, you know, getting Explorer back and going, it was hard because, you know, families were in this flux situation of, are we working remotely? Are we not working remotely? Do I go into the office? Can I take that time off? Can I not take that time off? And that was hard, getting our families back into the groove. And that meant a lot of work for our teachers to do that communication, to try to support those families and coming back. And this year we're starting to really feel like we're getting into that groove, and that left not a lot of headspace for that cross-site collaboration. We did do some activities with some other schools and things like that. But one of the things that we just were talking about, we shared our TOTS model. And one of the things that we want to expand that into is potentially partnering with another school. And I've talked to a couple principals who might be interested to have some sharing across, where our teachers can go observe at their school site and their teachers can come observe at our school site. And then we could have some sort of a collaboration to be able to talk about practices and all of that. So that's one aspect that we're exploring. We also were talking about it with our special day class staff. And specifically, we were talking about it for our para-educators. We've been really trying to work with our para-educators this year to provide them with support. And what they shared was, we would really, like, our group is not able to really do a lot of cross collaboration. And so they were sharing that they would love an opportunity to be able to go and see, what does a program look like at another school site, and what practices might we be able to bring back to our school site. So we're starting those conversations, and the fact that people are starting to bring them up and express an interest tells me that we're ready. But reading the room, knew that we weren't ready in these last 2 years.
Last but not least, I just want to say, like, I'm really hoping to come to some of your spring events as they happen. So,
yeah.
like, the more events you can shoot over to Mike and Jesus for us, like, I know the board would really like to see all this. I know you guys have a lot going on.
Yeah.
But when you guys have those events, we would love to come.
If you are looking for some fun on St. Patty's Day, it will be our walkathon. So we are having a fabulous St. Patrick's Day walkathon. But yes, we will certainly send over our events calendar. A lot of great things coming up this spring. We have a STEM night coming up. We've been talking about another possible event of a mystery night for students. So looking forward to some good stuff coming up.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Michelle? No questions. Thank you all for all the stuff and appreciate it.
Of course.
So I'm very excited that you guys are here.
Yes.
And it was a great presentation. I have a few questions.
Of course.
Referring to, I know that a lot of managements and principals in general have been getting the anti-racist training, and that you have been doing this culturally responsible walkthroughs around the classrooms. You have been showing us how you are focusing and you are looking in that lens, everything you are doing. But I don't know if you are yet prepared, because I know that Mike is always telling us that this is a long process and it's not an action item that is just done one day and ready. But among those, we've been looking forward in everybody that comes and hear a little bit about if you have learned from this process, if there is, I don't know if you're ready to have a conclusion or some lessons and challenges, well, not challenges, but opportunities to grow, and you just, like realization. So look at this is so cool. Now we can improve this thing that we never realized it was important or never seen. I don't know if that kind of things you guys are ready to see or share. If not, if it's a process, it's in the process, don't worry about it.
No, that's all right. So as I shared, that particular band for us is in our exploration stage right now. One of the things that I try to be very mindful of as an instructional leader is that if you have too many foci at one point, nobody focuses on anything. And so a lot of things get done very, very surface level, and you can't really go deep with them. And that's why we set up our goals in the way we did. So there's a lot of intentionality around what are we spending the most of our time on. Given what we have seen in our data, and Shana and I have similar goals working with the anti-racist coach around English learners and addressing the discrepancies between our English learners' performance and our all population performance. That has been something that we've really wanted to hone in on. It's something that we could hone in on without having to go into a place that put our staff in conversations that they weren't ready for yet. And we knew that they weren't ready for them yet because the previous year we had started some of that work, and we got a lot of feedback that let us know that we needed to really take a step back, and we needed to think about how we were going to approach that so that every member of our school community could feel comfortable going there. I say every member feels comfortable, and that's not realistic. There will be discomfort, and probably everybody will feel some discomfort, but we want to make sure that we're doing that in a very mindful way. And what we realized was we were pushing too fast, and it wasn't going to end up with a result that got us where we wanted to go. So that's why we took that into the exploration stage. We wanted to do some more base building, if you will, to really make sure that everybody was coming in at a similar place and had that background knowledge of this is why we're doing this. This is the type of work we're going to be talking about, really shining that light on our English learners so that people saw this is the urgent reason why we need to be doing this. And then we want to continue that conversation. So our next step had been starting our cultural forums, which we're starting, where we're going to be bringing families in to be able to give their perspectives, to hear where they are in terms of what they want to see for Fairwood and what they think is important that we are and are not doing right now. And then we want to take from there that input to decide where do we go next with it. So our teachers are definitely putting into place the culturally responsive teaching practices. They're definitely starting to explore some of those areas that we're seeing we haven't hit very well yet, but we have not gotten into a place where we're saying, and this is the implementation that we expect to see, because we want to make sure that the teachers have the tools to implement before we ask them to implement.
And now, coming back to the Explorer program, I see that you've been able to go back to Angel Island. That's an amazing living history experience, an overnight trip. Have you been able to start already all these field trips and the overnights? I don't know how many like like the Sutter Form or these things are open again or are happening and well, I know that we don't have big basing anymore, but other camping overnight.
Yeah, so we've started some of them. So Angel Island already happened. That was earlier this year. That was a quick one. You'll be getting in your board packets, I think for the next board meeting, the application for our overnight field trip to the Diggin' Days at Columbia State Park. So that's coming up. And then, there are a couple of other discussions around I don't think they've finalized the contract yet, but they were looking at the Sutter's Fort. So that was the next one on the list. But definitely pulling those back in and trying to slowly build them. The camping ones have been hard because a lot of the places that have been impacted by fires are the ones where we used to go. And so we haven't necessarily gotten back into that yet, but they definitely have that on their agenda to continue exploring.
Those are, I think, one of the most precious memories of the Explorer experience.
For sure.
Yeah, for families and kids, and definitely a hands-on learning education. Also, now referring to the independent studies, when we started the process, the idea was that it wasn't an in and out program. It was, a commitment for the whole year, so the kids would have stability and you can actually build a whole program. So the kids can work on that. But now that there is not so much population in this need, is there the same strong commitment and a strong study for each person? If they really need the program, they can have it, or can this be something that is applied for a kid in a medical emergency or a family emergency or whatever is happening in the family? Like, can we be in this, we're in X or Y situation, can we do this for 2 or 3 months and then we'll see what happens later?
Yeah, so now because the numbers allow for it, is we have the opportunity to actually have a very individual conversation with the family and student, depending upon age, to really look at the needs. We first and foremost, if it is something that would be, if it's, I think the numbers right now, if it's less than 15 days, they can do the regular short-term independent study. But if it is something that is going to exceed that, then we're going to have conversations. A medical need or a family emergency need certainly has come into play this year. We've been able to utilize the independent study program to serve that need. And so we have kind of now they can come in and then they can go out as it works for the student. We still strongly believe that in-person instruction and inside of a classroom is, first and foremost where we want students, but we also understand that needs arise for students to be able to have an educational opportunity to meet them where they are. But we still, continue conversations with families as we progress through the year of how are things going, what are we thinking, to continue to want them to kind of think about how we can continue to be a part of the school community, and is transition back in possible, or what does that look like for you? So that's where we are right now.
And I think one of the things that I would highlight with that is that that's especially important for some of our 8th graders because the high school does not have an independent study program. So we definitely have to be mindful of the fact that for them, transitioning back into the classroom at some point in 8th grade may be a benefit if they are going to be going to school in the Fremont Unified School District.
And I see that you have 268 approved volunteers in a population that is about 400 always.
350.
350, okay, so that's a big percentage. So you're having a lot of hours a week, like people is actually going and helping in the classroom and using the program.
It's
Yes.
a wonderful, it's just a wonderful flow throughout the day of just families coming in and getting to know them.
Definitely.
Perfect, well, thank you very much for keep working hard in this enterprise in general. And then we're really looking forward to see your, like, if we can see somehow your calendar so we can just drop by at any.
Definitely.
Any fun.
You're always welcome.
Having.
Come on over.
I would say unfortunately, the walkathon is the same day as that Children Now that she was talking about. That's why I was on my phone, so I was like,
Oh,
put
wait.
it in, and I was like, oh, I'm not available.
That's all right. We'll find another fun event for you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Michelle. Board, just want to, in terms of time, we have some parents who've been waiting a long time to speak. We have another agenda item before them. Depending on how fast you think you can get through that, or maybe we want to reverse the order.
Yeah, so maybe can we have any motion to amend the agenda and bring 9A before 8B?
Yeah, so I moved to, what's the word I used, adjust my motion, or for the agenda to move 9A before, was it 8B you said?
Nine is, yes, 8B
Before
before
8B.
Second, any second?
I don't know.
Okay, board, you wanna vote on this? Say,
You
say
take, ask for
aye.
public comment first on that.
Or do we have any public comment to change the agenda in this item?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, then now we can vote. Board, do you wanna, please, everybody who is,
Aye.
Aye.
say aye? Okay, with the chair votes aye, and then we move to change the agenda, modify the agenda and leave 9A before 8B today.
Okay, so.
So we are moving to 9A, and this is review and action, is public hearing and adoption of fourth grade growth, development and sexual health curriculum, and is presenting Christina Valentine, Director of Curriculum, Instruction and Assessment, and Jen Chen, the Assistant Principal on Special Assignments.
Thank you. Good evening, board, members of the public, and colleagues. I wanted to start by providing some context as to why we've made some why we're proposing a change to the growth development sexual health curriculum for our fourth grade students. So first, the state context. In January of 2016, the state of California adopted the California Healthy Youth Act. It's affectionately called CHIA. This prompted districts statewide to examine their sexual health policies and curriculum. In the context of fourth grade curriculum, CHIA focuses on 3 parts out of the 5 in total. Can I pull up the slides, please? Just to give context. So there are 5 main purposes of the California Healthy Youth Act that span to high school. For our fourth grade students, it really focuses on 3 out of the 5. So not number 1, but number 2, to provide pupils with the knowledge and skills they need to develop healthy attitudes concerning adolescent growth and development, body image, gender, sexual orientation, relationships, marriage, and family, as well as 3, to promote understanding of sexuality as a normal part of human development, and 5, to provide pupils with the knowledge and skills necessary to have healthy, positive, and safe relationships and behaviors. Earlier this year, a parent in our community brought the need to review our fourth grade GDSH curriculum and practices based on child legislation and also our district equity focus. A quick sidebar, family life used to be what this was called. When we went through this process with our middle schools, the parents actually said, growth development sexual health seems to be a better encompassing title because it's really not about one aspect of family life. It's really about growth and development, which we want to affirm and teach well and correctly, as well as sexual health for future. So just a quick sidebar there. With that parent advocating, we reviewed just past feedback that we had heard from families and parents, students indirectly, and also our staff. And we talked with our leadership team, including our site principals, and found that we did need to make some changes to our 4th grade curriculum. Jane Shen took the lead. We worked with outside experts and consultants, curriculum publishers, and then a dedicated team of 10 teachers and parents examined, evaluated, and recommended a curriculum for you tonight. So again, our focus areas were those 3 parts of CHAYA. We want to make sure that our students have accurate information about what happens during puberty. We know that with information available everywhere through phones and tablets, students have access to information and perhaps misinformation. So we want to make sure that they have accurate information from trusted adults at school and also at home. So we want to make sure of that. And we want to make sure that we are inclusive of students who may identify as transgender, gender non-binary, cisgender, gay, bisexual, asexual, and pansexual. And by extension, our community members, which may include our staff and our families. How did we get to our recommendation today? So working with a consultant from a nonprofit organization called Cardea, we looked at examined curriculum. Cardea is a nonprofit that works with districts across the state in selecting and implementing sexual health curriculum that meets CHAYA legislation. 4 curriculum were recommended for us. We eliminated 2 based on, again, CHAYA criteria. Similar to other curriculum adoptions, we went through a process where an advisory committee was formed. One piece I forgot to mention is on the state website, it says that there are approved curriculums from 2017 and CHAYA was from 2016. There's always a little bit of a delay in state processes. So the state approved list from 2017 actually came prior to CHAYA existing. That just comes from a timeline of them approving curriculum prior to legislation. So I want to give that caveat if you're looking online at the CD website. So our advisory committee worked to examine, evaluate, and come to consensus on what curriculum to recommend to the board tonight. I had the privilege of attending their last meeting, and I thought I wanted to share a little piece here. I thought that this team was incredibly thoughtful about the diverse interests and needs of our community. And one team member shared something like, this is not a direct quote, but shared something like, this process was organized really well and it was structured so we could have productive and respectful dialogue. I wish we could have recorded it because it was on Zoom, because our conversation was an exemplar of respectful discourse, even when we had different perspectives. So thank you to the dedication of the team, again, led by Jane. The curriculum recommendation from the advisory group for GDSH for 4th grade curriculum is Puberty, the Wonder Years. With that, we're here to support you in your review and action process.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you for your presentation and your hard work in this matter. So now we are moving now to public comments. So if there are any members of the public who would like to speak on this item, we have here some cards. We're very grateful that you've been so patient and waiting until we were able to come to this item. And we're gonna start with the people who is here, and we have 2 people then online. Okay, perfect. So we start with the people here, and we're gonna start with Kathy. Oh, yes.
Public hearing, so you have to officially open the public hearing. So they can remove the public comment.
Yes.
And then we probably want to read the clear book out.
Perfect.
So for me to remind them everything.
Yes, so is yet, well, as we have some people, then we're gonna notice before we announce the first one. The times limits allocated public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per public comments in general. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. If you are in person, please provide with a speaker card, which we have. If you would like to speak during this section remotely on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature as we've been doing during the meeting. As a reminder, per or by Board 9323, the board shall not prohibit public criticism of its policies, procedures, programs, services, act, or omissions. During public comments, we encourage speakers to discuss issues with civility, to treat people whose opinions differ from their own with respect, and to focus on ideas, policies, and values. In person, we have.
Go ahead and open the.
You have to, it's different than.
We have to open the public hearing.
Okay, so we open right now the public hearing, and we have one, two,
8:40.
See the time.
3, 4, 5. We have 5 people in person and 2 online, and it's right now 8:40. And we are. You may go ahead, and our first person today will be Kathy Rowland from, Kathy. Yes.
And then the time will be up there, so you'll be able to, Lisa should be up there.
Thanks, Michelle.
And on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Katie Rowland, and I am a San Miguel parent, and I also had the great honor of serving on this curriculum selection committee. So first of all, I want to applaud the district for taking action and listening, taking seriously the concerns raised by parents and by teachers regarding the prior curriculum. It was out of sync with California law. It was out of sync with district values around empathy and equity and with the needs of our students. Essentially, it told cisgender girls what puberty might be like if you happen to be white, Christian, cisgender, and heterosexual. And it didn't tell anything to anyone else. But all students deserve to learn this critical healthcare information in an inclusive and affirming space. The proposed new curriculum, the Wonder Years, and the decision to educate all of our students regardless of their gender moves us closer to this goal, so I encourage you to adopt them for the present moment. In addition, the GDSH unit needs more frequent review. The prior curriculum was filmed in the 1990s and has been in use in the district since about 2008. Many on the selection committee also felt that a more coordinated approach across grade levels, especially for grades 4 and 5, would be appropriate in this area. So if you looked at the report online, Ms. Jen and Ms. Valentine also echoed that the curriculum committee advised that. And lastly, I urge you to provide robust training for teachers in this area. There was a 2021 meta-analysis that looked at how it was going for our LGBTQIA+ students in this area. And they concluded that right now they don't receive comprehensive and inclusive sexual education. And they attributed the reason because teachers currently lack access to information, training, and resources. Our teachers want to do right by our students. That's what I hear every day when I'm at San Miguel and at the Ed Foundation hearing what other teachers are saying. So please equip them to do so. These actions together would make for safer and healthier students who feel that no matter who they are, how they worship, where they come from, or who they love, they belong here in the Sunnyvale School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next card is for Kathy House.
Hello, my name is Katie House, and I am speaking as an individual. I have a daughter at San Miguel in 2nd grade. I am here to voice my support for the proposed human growth and sexual development curriculum. And it is important and necessary for all humans to have access to an inclusive health and sexual education curriculum within the public school environment. As a parent, I appreciate and value learning, educating, and humanizing bodies with a curriculum that is representative of our current 2023 community. I also believe that the Sunnyvale School District has a responsibility to educate about human growth and sexual development with a curriculum that is inclusive of the entire community, regardless of sexual identity or orientation, as well as and the well-being of transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse humans. Knowledge is power. Giving our kids the ability to speak freely about bodies, body changes, sexual health and wellness, sexual orientation and gender through education will reduce stigma and bias and promote safer sexual health and well-being for all of our kids and around the Sunnyvale community. I hope this curriculum will be the first of many steps towards a more inclusive and representative health and sexual education with respect to justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. As Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Glenda Ortiz Galan.
Thank you. Good evening. Buenas tardes, members of the board and district staff. My name is Glenda Ortiz Galan, and I'm a parent of two boys, one attending CMS and the other second grader at San Miguel in the Juntos program. I'm here to express my support for the new puberty curriculum, the Wonder Years, that I hope will be presented to fourth graders in a mixed group. I appreciate that all children will be exposed to information about body changes, respecting your peers, diversity, what families look like, addressing stereotypes, and most importantly, gender identity and gender expression. While I feel that this is an improvement from what has been offered in the past, I can't help but say that this curriculum feels appropriate for my second grader. As we've taught our children from infancy age-appropriate sexuality education and the importance of self-expression and self-love. I believe that schools should teach these topics at a much younger age, and I was looking at some of the standards where we could be teaching anatomy in first grade. So in any event, I just basically believe schools should teach these topics at a younger age. As we all want our children to make healthy choices as they're growing into their teen years and adulthood. As an educator and former health educator in teen pregnancy prevention and STI HIV prevention, I am aware that there are organizations that teach comprehensive sexuality education in the schools, including puberty education. And I wonder if the district could explore this for the future. If our teachers are not feeling equipped or trained to teach puberty comprehensive sex ed to their students. Thank you. Gracias.
Gracias. Our next speaker in person will be AJ Nam.
Hi, good evening. My name is EJ Nam, and I'm a parent of a fourth grader and first grader at Cherry Chase Elementary, and I also have the privilege of serving on the advisory council for this topic. And I'm here today to really encourage the board to adopt the Puberty Wonder Years curriculum for fourth graders. The curriculum that we currently had in place, as I was made aware, thank you to Katie, was really not up to par for what the district and our schools believe in regards to equity and inclusion. I've heard a lot of themes today about anti-racism, about making sure our students have safe spaces and feel heard and feel included in this community, and having a curriculum that does not provide equity and inclusion, equitable and inclusive language and equitable teaching to our LGBTQIA students is really going against the grain of what this district stands for. While I do believe this curriculum goes strides ahead of where we are today if we were to maintain the current curriculum, I also agree that I hope that the district and the board continue to look at this curriculum and continue to reiterate on the curriculum and continue to improve it, and also provide better consistency from fourth to fifth grade and going on to sixth and beyond, just to make sure that there's a very consistent message and inclusive throughout the curriculum. In addition, I also hope that while I love and trust our teachers, that there is very comprehensive training for our teachers to deliver this message. While, like Eileen said, as public education and government employees, that we are here to do right by our community, I also believe our teachers want to do right by our students. But not all of our teachers are comfortable or equipped to talk about some of the hard topics, especially around gender identity and sexual identity. And so equipping them with the right tools and the right language will also help make this program successful. Thank you.
Thanks. And our last card speaker for in person today is Roberto Eliseo.
Good evening. My name is Ruperto Licea, father of 3 boys. One is 17, second is 14, and the last one is turning 10. I'm here to say my opinion is different. As a father, I have the authority and the right to say I oppose to this curriculum to be teaching at the 4th grades. I came here twice and I reviewed the lessons, and I seen some materials including gender identity with the new terms. For me, it's more confusion to the kids. I oppose this class to be teaching at 4th grade, not at the 4th grade. I have 3 sons. I remember when I started my puberty at age 13, and I know everybody start at the same age. Girls start a little earlier than boys. My 2 boys start about 12 and a half and 13, the puberty. I agree they should be teaching about body change. That's natural and normal, but not at the 4th grade. For me, it's important to listen different opinions and wait. I don't know how many parents came to see the material. Can you tell me how many parents came?
Go ahead and complete your thoughts and then the board will direct
Yeah,
questions.
I don't know how many parents came to see the material. I received an email from San Miguel that this material is going to be shown for parents, and thank you for letting us know. They say Monday to Friday, but then they say Monday to Thursday, 8 to 6. I think there's not enough time to parents to come and to review and make their own opinions. And I noticed in this material, and one of the lessons have what makes my family special. They say number 1, mother, 2nd, uncle, and number 3, teacher. And I noticed, what is the father? What is only mother there? What is the father? I think families, healthy families, including father and mother. So I noticed is missing father. I'm not a father. I'm a father of 3 boys. The household is mother and father. So my suggestion to you, to finish, give them us more time. Allow more parents give the opinion. Maybe stem to the all elementary schools in Sunnyvale, so they're more easy to access to preview. And then when most of the parents review the material, they make an opinion. If the majority say okay, okay. That's my concern and my input. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us your opinion about the question of the number.
So why don't we finish the public comment?
Oh, yes.
And then you
yes,
can
yes.
direct questions to staff.
Perfect. So let's go online with the people that is online. You say there were 2 before, still 2?
Yes. The first one is Veronica Brand.
Okay, Veronica, you can start. We have the timer.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Veronica Brand, and I'm a parent of 2 students at San Miguel Elementary School. My eldest is currently in 3rd grade, while my younger one is in kindergarten. First of all, I'd like to applaud the district for reviewing the growth, development, and sexual health curriculum, using a lens focused on equity and inclusion. I believe that it is important to have accurate and inclusive information provided to our students so that they can feel empowered to make good choices. So much stuff is out there in the media and in our surrounding environment, and I appreciate that the school curriculum is in collaboration with parents and families as we help our students learn more about their own bodies. I was able to review the Wonder Years curriculum at the district office last week, so thank you for ensuring that that was available. I appreciated the curriculum writer's philosophy of comprehensive sexual education with the freedom to make healthy decisions and using that approach over one based on fear and shame. In general, I thought that the curriculum was good and I support its approval. However, I think it could have gone even further in supporting an inclusive perspective, and the slides that were part of the curriculum left a lot to be desired. I don't think the cartoonish figures accurately represent the racial diversity of our district, and I was disappointed that there was a lack of diversity of body shapes and sizes. I did not see discussion on breast development for bodies assigned female at birth, and I thought that that was a major miss for encouraging self-confidence and understanding breastfeeding. As a result of all this, I echo the wonderings from the advisory group and ask that the district conduct more frequent searches for a curriculum as more options become available. I also encourage looking at curriculums that teach appropriate information as early as kindergarten. And lastly, I would also encourage continued staff training on how to create safe and open environments to hold tricky conversations for all grade levels so that this is not something new in 4th grade. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have one more online speaker.
Yes.
Ali?
The next one is Katie Brewster.
Okay, Peggy Brewster. So you can go ahead and start talking and the timer will start as soon as you start. Peggy?
Peggy, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, my name is Peggy Brewster. I'm the parent of a 2nd grader at Bishop Elementary. I want to commend the district for being open-minded and welcoming of progress. It speaks volumes that parents can bring up curriculum concerns and that not only are they heard, but they are also included in the selection of new curriculum. It's especially encouraging that this process took months, not years, as is common with curriculum shifts elsewhere. Human growth, development, and sexual health education is a topic that's divisive in other parts of our nation. But here in Sunnyvale, we are in agreement that we need to move towards more respectful, inclusive, and affirming campuses and curriculum. I also second the call to support robust teacher training on this topic. While I encourage this new GDHS curriculum to be adopted, it's important to recognize that this is an area that needs further review and revision and should not again stagnate for a decade. I'm proud of Sunnyvale School District's progressive mindset. From our commitment to anti-racism to this consideration and adoption of a more progressive GDHS curriculum, I applaud the district and board's progressive efforts. It matters. Thank you.
Any more comments online? Okay, I think we're done with the public comment session. So before we start talking about it, we need to have a motion. Close the public hearing. Okay, sure, sorry. I didn't write that. So we are gonna close the public comment and it's 8:57 right now. Do we want to
Excuse me, sorry.
answer right now or after questions?
So my question, how many parties came to review?
Yeah, so she's gonna ask the questions of staff.
Okay.
Yes. So staff.
So Christina, can you give an idea how many people viewed the?
We do. We had about 27 parents come in and view the curriculum in person. Also due to a challenge on the publisher end with the online piece, we did send out links, which is typically not our process, but we didn't want parents to be waiting around for the link to come up. So we did send out some links to families as requested. And also based on parent requests, we expanded the preview hours. So some families said we can't come to the district office between the working day. Thank you, Jane, for extending into 6 o'clock at night. So we had a couple nights where we were available at 6 o'clock. We also had days past our typical preview window this week. So it was a little bit longer as well.
Okay.
I answered 2 questions.
That was good.
Thank you. So before we open for board discussions and questions, we need to pass a motion. So is there a motion for the approval of the presentation of the resolution as presented?
I so move.
Okay, anyone second?
I'll second.
Okay, so now board, do you want to share questions and comments?
I had a question about that. So for the previews, is that about typical for this, for the amount of number of people coming? Is that about typical what we usually get? And
Considering that this particular curriculum is for a specific grade level, this was actually atypical. We had many more parents come in to preview this material than we did in comparison, the history social studies curriculum that we adopted last year for all of elementary school. We probably had fewer parents come in and preview that curriculum.
For this topic, is it normal? A lot of parents usually come in for like the last, I guess it's been a while.
I would need to look more into that. Last curriculum adoption was 5th grade.
Do you ever do curriculum review at the school sites? Like, is there a desire to have more parents review it? Or is it just traditionally it's been at the district office and there hasn't been a big push that way?
We haven't heard a big push to have it at the school sites, and we have it here at the district office, mostly so we can have staff that can answer questions as they come up. So Jane was available, Alka, our instructional materials specialist was available to answer questions. Occasionally there's technology problems with logging in, and so we're able to provide staff here centrally to support parents in previewing easily.
Can you tell us more about the committee, how much they work into getting into the resolution and how much they met, they work together, they got the material with time?
So we had a committee of 10 teachers and parents working together with Jane. They met with the publishing companies. It happened over a few months time period. They had time to preview the materials, ask questions of the publishers, and they came together. But Jane, what else am I missing? Oh, excellent.
Okay. So, I have one more question. I have a couple, but the one I wanted to throw in was, so we teach this in 4th grade because, like, when my kids were, it was a while ago, when my 2 sons were in 4th grade, the boys would watch a movie about bugs or dinosaurs, and the girls would learn about their changing bodies because the girls were preparing to get their period, and the school district wanted them to be prepared for that. And it wasn't boys and girls, at the time there was no discussion of other genders, right? Even though other genders were in the room. My kids were perfectly happy with that. They were excited to have a day free from anything but, an hour free from other than dinosaur or insect talk. My question is like, that's because that's the age of, the Menses age for girls is quite young now, correct? It's like 9 is about.
Yeah, so the range of female assigned at birth menstruation is getting younger. And actually, when we heard the parent request earlier this year, we went back in records of like, what was some of the feedback from teachers in the past, as well as parent requests. And the request was to move just teaching of puberty at an earlier age, because all of our students are experiencing puberty younger. And also we want to demystify just growth and development for all students. We don't want this to become a place, again, where students are seeking out information from non-trusted, non-accurate sources. I don't know if that answered the question, Bridget.
Yeah, because when I was just over at the homeless shelter, and they were talking about having to have hygiene products for 9-year-olds, and that she said it was surprising her. So I just was piggybacking on the question of like, why at this age, right? Go ahead, I have another one for later. I can see you're ready.
I have a question about teachers' ability to enhance the curriculum if they can, and how I looked through the curriculum, and one thing that I personally thought could have been covered more was consent. And is that something that it's not in the curriculum, but is that something that teachers individually can add if they feel is best?
Well, it's kind of an issue though, right? Because what happens is, like, we always talk about, well, the teacher can add it in, and then we're asking the teacher to make something up. So I guess what you're saying is that you're disappointed that there's not much about consent in even at this age.
Right, I think it can be, I think that could have been handled better in the curriculum. I still think it's better than what we've had, but that was not.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is also reflective of what our parents shared, and it's in the feedback, which is this curriculum is a step in terms of having more inclusive curriculum, and no curriculum is perfect. So our next step is to provide training for our teachers. I will just elaborate a little bit. We are doing a full day of training for our teachers, so that way they feel we are going to work on building their skill set, working on language, understanding our own biases and comfort, as well as understanding the curriculum. So we are creating safe spaces for all of our students. So that's work that's in place. And also through that process and also through teaching, we will probably continue to identify places where we can clarify, where we can make improvements, things that we might change and omit. But we also want to make sure that, like all curriculums, that we have some consistency in that. So our students, no matter what teacher you have, what school you attend, there's equality of instruction.
I am so impressed by how quickly you guys did this. Good job, team.
In general, well, we do have a pretty good science program, a hands-on program in elementary school and for little kids, but I don't feel, but well, I suppose we're busy in other things, but that we have a good enough like anatomy or medicine program that start not just about the reproductive system, but demystifying everything else to whatever health issues, but like more with the body or in general. So maybe we can be prepared at this level by the time we get in fourth grade. It's just another one that we're adding now to gastric, skin, whatever. And now we're adding this one because we're bodies and we're humans. And this is just another normal thing to learn.
Yeah, I think as well that directly reflects what our parents were asking for, which is this is a good first step, and also is there a place for us to teach about just bodies at all ages and what would that look like? So this is where we are right now. And then our next step is to make sure that the rollout of this is, again, well thought out, strategic, maybe that's not the right word, but well thought out, thoughtful, use the word twice. So because I'm not a night person. I think you know that about me. I've been up for a while. But we want to create safe spaces for our students right now in fourth grade. And then our next step is to look at what would that look like past fourth grade.
I have a question. So for fourth grade is this year, but it's a 1-year adoption, correct? Or is this, we're adopting this year? So that was a question that came up for me, when I was talking to someone, they said, well, are we adopting it just for 1 year? Or this is like when you're saying this is the year that we're adopting it, what is the review cycle on this thing?
So we would be adopting it this year for many years. Like it was shared, actually GDSH curriculum is not on a regular adoption cycle. And also this is an area that is continually changing and developing. And we want to make sure that we're reviewing this curriculum more frequently, so we're up to date.
So next year's fifth grade in theory?
Fifth grade curriculum does meet child legislation. I think the work that we have to do after this year is looking at articulation down in grade levels and articulation up. So what does it look like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th for us, and then also what could it possibly look like for other grade levels?
Well, when you say it meets, you mean meets the requirements, but like this year, it seemed like, okay, not only were there some requirements issues, but wow, there's language and there's images and there's things like that. I mean, the 5th grade teachers who I know managed this discussion were like incredibly fluid with it and very comfortable with it, and like it was their jam. They had done it a number of times, and they built on it and like supplemented the material, like both with their personalities and their connections with the kids and just tips that they had gotten from one another. But I'm wondering if we learned something from this curriculum adoption that maybe we should look at the next one for similar things and take into account like the other stuff. Is there an opportunity to do that or an interest for us to do that, to look at like to review the whole thing over time, like not tomorrow, but like to get it in a sequence or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like the other ones were adopted fairly recently, so they all are under the, like they all have been adopted since the new.
Fifth grade was more recently?
Yes, that's my understanding. And we can do some more investigating. Jane and I are both new to this realm. And so we'll continue to look into it.
So I think the stuff that they're doing of like, right, like making sure language like transitions smoothly, right? Like the things, even if it's a different curriculum, if they're all lining up, they still should, right? Like smoothly, so they're gonna look into it, right?
The boys still used to get it on fifth grade. And then on sixth grade, another beat, and then they kept growing, but now it's, I mean, the first, as you used to say, like in fourth grade were only the girls, and then in fifth grade was everybody, and then they were changing, but now we just started 1 year early.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. San Miguel came out a lot tonight. I was wondering if you knew if the other schools had been informed in some way?
So,
Sorry, Cherry Chase raised their hand, so I assume. Thank you.
I'm only Cherry Chase parent, but I can tell you our principal did send out a couple of emails about this specifically. And it was sent targeted to fourth grade parents.
The fourth grade parent.
Do we?
Usually, I think we let first off,
Yeah,
usually let that.
Not usually.
No, you're sorry.
But I think we need to right now.
Yeah, but because we let one person
Yeah.
comment, you engage, you probably need to engage with the other person.
Yeah,
Okay, that's, I'm gonna tell Isabel.
Yeah.
Isabel's the one who would call, not us.
Well, she, yeah.
But Isabel's the one who would call on them.
Okay, yes, you. I
Yeah,
suppose
I've asked some questions to parents of San Miguel, if they don't know about this information.
There was a parent of San Miguel there, yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay.
You gotta stop.
So
We
Isabel,
gotta
you
stop,
need
we
to-
gotta stop.
So
Yes,
the
yes, this is-
information, it doesn't
I can
go well
Engage. Yeah.
to all families.
in terms of communication, we did work with all of our principals to make sure that communication was consistent across all the sites. So there was a script for email messages. We followed up to make sure that it went out several times because it also went out with a revision because due to parent feedback, we extended hours on certain days and also as needed, people reached out to Jane to schedule additional times to view the curriculum.
Was it a follow-up on this, was it sent, so like I'm a fourth grade parent at Cumberland, right? So I know like I received emails, but was it just sent to fourth grade, parents of fourth grades, or was it sent to all elementary families?
Oh, that's a good question. My understanding is that it was sent to all families, because, and what I mean by all elementary age families, and the reason why is because even if you don't have a fourth grader this year.
No, I think that's better. I just, since I'm like a fourth grade parent, like I don't know if it was, right, like I'm
Jane,
not a parent
Jane's
of
nodding.
something else too, yeah. So it was sent to all parents, yeah.
So I guess what I was trying to say earlier was, you know, I would appreciate it if the curriculum, if teaching and learning as a department would really take a look at this through the grade levels, see if there's an opportunity or an interest in looking at it at all grades, like what human development is in all grades, and then verifying that the images, as well as following the letter of the law, like the images and the tools that the teachers are given is like, is balanced, right? You know?
And just to clarify, I can't remember the year, but this exact same process that we've gone through for this program, we went through for the current program that we had. And that was in alignment with the new regulations that came out of the content that needed to be in there. We worked through the county office and we actually at one point was working with, Planned Parenthood as well, with some of the support, including for our more significantly impaired students at the middle school, actually, because there's a modified curriculum for those students. So we've gone through a similar process and that's what brought us here. So we definitely made a note as we go through process. If in that curriculum, there's changes or things we can improve upon, we will, but the current program that we do have does meet the criteria based upon what the requirements are and what should be included in the content.
No, I understand. I'm not
Okay.
talking about the requirements of the content. I heard that loud and clear that it meets the requirements. I'm talking about like the visual perception, like the visual of it, right? Like.
Just review that over
When we
time.
just heard like, oh, there's not representation for different body types, you know, or multiple races and things. Like, I think that people seeing themselves in books, right? Like, there's all those stats on publishers that they're saying like, you know. So I just think that would be really positive if that's, especially since the parents are, and the families are noticing that.
Okay, so any more comments from the board?
I
Yes.
can share my thoughts. So first, I just want to say I'm super grateful that we're able to hear different perspectives. I think that's really something in our district just generally, right, as we are working on equity and inclusion in safe spaces, that we're not all going to have the same opinion. And so I'm just really grateful that we've been able to hear different perspectives tonight. Sorry, I closed up. I also just wanted to share that I'm grateful that I think reaching out to the families, I don't know if it was done differently than other curriculums or just somehow it was more effective. Because I think more people found out about it, but it does sound like maybe it wasn't, maybe some schools did do a better job. So I think just checking in with the schools to make sure that we are getting, am I on?
Yes.
So kind of, right, we did better, but we can always even do better, right, to like get that information out. And I was grateful for the extending, when people had a need, extending the time. I think future though too, more than 1 week, right? And it sounds like maybe you extended this week, but that wasn't a necessarily public awareness. So I think future, right, having a couple weeks for parents to look at and ask questions would be great. I would just echo some of the same concerns that some of the speakers shared. So I think concerns about not highlighting the importance of fathers. I mean, that in our society has been a problem for years. So if that's one of the pieces that's missing, I think that's important to look at. I think that's important, the pieces about, variety of body size and images, right? So if that's not in there, I think that's super important. And, different, not just body size, but, different, people like races. I also appreciate the comments, and it was good to hear that it sounds like you guys are going to do this, but the importance of having really robust training on this, right? That, some teachers are going to feel a lot more comfortable. And so not just the 1-day training, but then, figuring out the teachers who might need some more support and more help to feel comfortable and confident in teaching this curriculum is important. And then I just wanted to kind of share an experience I had earlier this week that I think it is a tricky space with people who have different opinions on things like this. So just so everyone's aware, I am very Christian, but I think I also lean more liberal, but I have both of those pieces as a part of who I am, right? So earlier this week, I was talking with somebody, not from this district, I think she lives an hour or two away, and she was sharing some of the concerns as another Christian person, some of her concerns, and she was expressing that she had heard that they were trying to maybe in her district take away all gender, you never use he or she and everything had to be it. And so just as we were talking, I just had this conversation with her that I was like, one, I don't know if that's actually true in your district. I would look into that more, ask some more questions. And I was like, but if that is true, I disagree with that. But I disagree with it because we need to expand, right? We don't make everybody the same. We keep he's, we keep she's, but it's it and it's they and it's whatever everybody wants. And that idea of we want to include everybody, right? And it's hard sometimes when you might have a different opinion, but I think it's so important that we open up, right? That we open up and say, hey, I might not agree with what's being taught or what's being shared, but I want everyone to feel welcome. I want everyone to feel included. And I think especially, right, as our role of board members, over the years, I've realized my number one job is that all the students in our district feel safe, right? And if they feel safe and welcome and included, then they will be able to get education, right? They will be able to have these other pieces. And so having curriculum that is more inclusive and welcoming and inviting is really important. So anyways, those are all my thoughts that I want to share. And thank you so much for all the work that you guys put into it. And I appreciate it.
Okay. Eileen, you're gonna share, right?
No.
You're not gonna talk about that?
Oh, no, what was?
Oh, yeah, we gotta talk about that. Okay,
Okay.
so Eileen pulled up the page in the book that says what makes my family special. And you know, what I'm noticing is that there's a worksheet that you hand out to the children, to the students, and it has 4 or 5 boxes on there. And the page that the gentleman from the audience was referring to was the TE example. So you could put mother, or you could put, it says list the family members and talk about their roles in the family. And so the examples were like, hey, think about putting a mother there, think about putting an uncle there, think about putting a teacher there. But on the list that you actually give to the students, it's blank and it has like 5 or 6 people that could be in your family. So some kids might be foster kids and they might not have, they're just trying to think of a trusted adult, and so I think that it might have been a misunderstanding. I don't think the book is saying that fathers aren't important. I think it was just trying to help the teacher understand that not everybody has two parents or even parents that are alive and there. So I don't think that it was saying fathers aren't important. I do like dads. I do.
To expand on that, yeah, it's those are sample answers. It's mother and uncle and teacher, and I feel like I know at Lakewood we generally say you're grown up instead of your parent because sometimes kids don't have those. Sometimes they live with grandparents or aunts and uncles, and so I feel like this example is offering suggestions, but that it leaves it open enough for the teacher to be able to expand or the child to be able to interpret. And I don't have a quarrel with this slide.
Okay. Well, I think it's 9:20. Even though it was important to give enough time to an important issue and after so much work, but we could, maybe we're ready. Do we think that we're ready? Okay. So board, if we close the questions from the boards and the open discussion we've been having today, all those in favor, we're gonna vote. So seeing that we are done with this discussion, we're gonna start the vote. So all those in favor to the approval of the resolution as presented, please say aye. Aye. Okay, with the chair chair votes aye, we pass the resolution and we are approving the adoption of the 4th grade growth, development and sexual health curriculum. Thank you. Now we come back to the rest in order of the presentations that we have today. We have the presentation 8B, presentation on construction updates and summer project outlook. And the contact person is Brand Burns, Director of Facilities and Operations.
Good evening, board, cabinet, members of the public. We're excited tonight. This is one of my favorite quarterly presentations, is to talk about construction. That's what we love doing. It's awesome to share what we've done and what we're going to do with the board and the community members. I'm glad to follow Colin tonight because he brought a lot of good points up. Everything that we're about to go over in this presentation would not be possible without the support of our community. These projects are measured G and measured GG. Our district would be very different if we didn't have the community support that we have and the successful bond rate passage that we've had. And certainly we will advertise these to our community members. They're great. You talked about structures for students and supports at campuses. I will continue to advocate that facilities are a huge support for students on campuses, and they do play a role in the success our students can have. And I think that's an important message for our community members to hear. So I will dive into the presentation. Biggest one, and one that we're extremely excited is starting to roll now, is Sunnyvale Middle School. This is the campus that everybody knows needs a lot of work on it. It has a lot of needs that are going to exceed our current bonding capacity, our current bond that we have. But we're rolling. We've identified priority projects from the board workshops that we've performed, And now that we have an agreement with LPA, we have started the process integrating the committees formed on the sites, working with Vince, working with his team, making sure that the committee is made up of people that are on site so they have a voice in this process. They may have not been there for the facility master plan. So that is one of the key components that we're gonna be doing. Our first meeting with them is next week. We're gonna have 3 meetings in the next month and a half to kind of like finalize design development, make sure that we are going in the right direction to go out for this RFP for our developers. The other fun component of this is Myron and I get to go check out modular and component buildings. With the budget that we have, we think that we're gonna be able to get the best value out of our projects by going with a hybrid model of modular and stick built. So we're gonna take a look at some products and see what's out on the market right now. All those will come into play as we issue the RFP for our developer. I think we're next slide. And then so project that we are right in the middle of, on a progression sheet, we're about 55% of the way done, is Ellis Elementary School. And I'm gonna turn it over to Myron and let him talk to you about just all the integration, everything that we've done to this point. But I do wanna shout out like Stephanie, Laura, all the teachers. I know I've brought it up before. Teaching on a site that's under construction, extremely difficult. All of the shells that are moving around, all the pieces, all the noise, extremely hard. What we're gonna be doing here in the next couple of weeks, and Myron will speak to it. It's a big monumental move. So kudos to their whole staff. They've been great to work with. I know this hasn't been easy for them, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's just a couple more coordination items to check off the list, but it's coming along really nice. With that, I'll turn it over to Myron.
So stay on the side for a moment. So this is the rendering. Oh, sorry. Rendering, it's about, like Brantley mentioned, about 55% of that vision is complete now. We got the administration building, the big blue roof in the center of that screen. We got that renovated, we had the addition, that was the summer of last year. Now we got Building B coming online. Building B is that big 2-story classroom building with the solar panels right in the forefront of that image. So
Near the cars.
near the car. So, and at the far end, which would be the furthest building you can't really make out, that is the Kinder building that is facing Fair Oaks. So can you push the slide? So it's almost like one of the things that Brad didn't mention, that it's like the work we should be extremely proud of, is like how on track we are, like with all the material lead time delays, all the crazy weather we've been getting. To be able to open on time and on schedule that was put together 2 years ago is quite an accomplishment, and it speaks well to the contractor, the design team, and just everyone's general flexibility to make things move efficiently and quickly. So what you're looking at here is the phasing of the site. So we're kind of like the dog that caught the car. we hit a milestone, we got this done, but now we got to get everyone shuffled around. So for this is what we're showing here is the temporary campus. So for between February and June, this is what Ellis is gonna look like. Yellow is what is gonna be usable with the turf, the fields being the lower bottom right-hand corner of that. And what's gonna be really different is how the drop off and pickup is gonna look like. So that's something that like me and Brant have been working very closely with Stephanie and her team in help with that transition. So not only like the physical move, but also getting information to parents, getting information to staff, just highlighting exactly how transformational this is, because it's a new campus, so to speak, because everyone's gonna be going from the green zone to the yellow zone almost, right? So so that's phase 1, the yellows. Phase 2A, kind of like the bottom left, upper right, that's what you're looking at, is what we're focusing on next. So come August of 2023, buildings L, N, and P, and the daycare will be complete. And that will be open come the new school year. So that would be the next area of focus here. So here's just some pictures so you can kind of see what it looks like in real life. Building B, over there, a 2-story classroom building, and that freshly poured asphalt that was just completed 2-3 days ago. So this is moving quickly, and we're moving in the 20th, and everyone's really excited.
Lynn, I know you're new on the board, but that picture in the bottom right is the crane date for AMS. So those are modular buildings. They get craned into place, and it was like an extremely exciting event for students on campus. Like one of the highlights.
Yeah, so I'll give you an idea. So like these things get fabricated in the Inland Empire. They get brought in on big flatbed trucks. So in the morning when the students came, there were like 10 flatbed trucks with these half the buildings there. By the afternoon when they left, they were all put on their foundations. So it was
Just like Legos.
exactly. So our joke was we brought the field trip to them. All right. So I just want to touch on a little bit on the classrooms. I mean, I had no input on the design, but I'm really impressed by how much is packed into these classrooms. I mean, like in terms of technology, there's an AV integrated system where like it's just kind of hidden and useful. So like, for example, there's mics and a dongle that the teacher could wear and that would amplify their voice. These speakers are hidden in ceilings. A lot of the tech and computer stuff is hidden in the ceilings as well. So all the teacher has to deal with is this little simple interface that you see of the buttons there. On, off TV, Apple TV, they can cast wirelessly to it. They can connect their HDMI to it. So a lot of the classroom features are pretty seamless and easy to use. And we, in the middle of like kind of getting everyone acclimated to the school, we brought a lot of tours of the teachers into their space. And the common thing that comes up with all the teachers is like how spacious it is. And that's about the accounting for a little bit higher ceilings and on our kind of our effort to kind of reduce the amount of casework in the space, and large windows certainly help to kind of bring light and, give that sense of space.
All right, so speaking to the furniture, and I'll speak to this very quickly. So we took what the facility master plan and everything that we discussed during that process, we brought those ideas to the Ellis staff. We put together a furniture committee, which we do on any one of our campus modernizations because it is the best opportunity to replace and refresh all the furniture. Furniture is a 20-year useful life item. When you're doing a campus, if the furniture is past its useful life, which definitely wasn't Ellis, you update it. And so put together a committee spanning multiple grade levels, making sure that we have flexible furniture that allows teachers to put together collaborative spaces if they wanted, move it around the room so they can optimize the space that they have in their classrooms. We eliminate a lot of casework to give them more flexibility to the space, and it's fantastic. Like multiple seating options for students. Like myself, if you ever watch me like sitting back there, I fidget. Like my feet are going, I have to move. There's options in here like chairs that wiggle a little bit. Places to sit down if you want to sit, bar stools if you want to sit up a little higher. Like it really tries to encompass every student and what kind of needs they would need in the classroom. So I'm really proud about this.
I'll just add that Stephanie and her furniture committee really dug deep into how to make this work. They looked at Bishop and their definition of furniture flexibility, and they really expanded upon it. And they made some really deliberate choices in terms of how they wanted to furnish different grade groups, grade levels. So what you see there is a smattering, and when you guys come to tour, you'll have a chance to see exactly what they purchased. And there's going to be a PD component to this as well. We know that like not all teachers are going to embrace this right away. There's some champions, obviously, but some slow adopters. So there's going to be multiple rounds of professional development to help get everyone on board and on the same page.
All right, and the very important part, the money part. So original contract amount was $42,581,000, and that was with Sasol. You can see the 5 change orders that have been approved since then, giving us a total change order value of $497,000. Lori could probably look at me and look at those numbers and see if I'm right, but $497,000 with invoice to date being 22 million, almost 23. That is a change order rate at a fraction over 2%. If you take out the offsite permit fee, which was included in change order 1, you are sub 2%. We look at a project of a design bid build, a success if we're in between the range of like 3 and 7. So right now things are looking pretty good. Next slide.
This is our final slide. Just kind of give you a quick update on summer projects coming up this summer. It's going to be a busy summer for me and Brant. We got multiple things going on in multiple campuses. So the TK refurbishment projects and the HVAC roofing projects, they're all currently all under contract. We got them bid out November of last year. One of the reasons why we went so far out in the calendar year to bid out these projects is for lead times. That HVAC carrier unit, you're looking at the mechanical unit you see on the bottom right-hand corner. Like they were getting, we're talking to manufacturers and vendors and suppliers, they're telling us roughly 6 months. So that's why we went this far out to get in contract. But so far, what we're hearing back from the suppliers that they will be in on time for our project. So just getting a little bit more luck on our side. We'll get a good summer project underway.
And then lastly, on the HVAC projects, Myron kind of spoke to it in regards to lead times and material costs. So HVAC units were something that got really expensive really quick. I mentioned this in the CBOC meeting, but Doug Coons was on the CBOC committee, sent us a grant opportunity. He's just heard about, he sent it our way, said, maybe this is something you're interested in. We were successful in getting a $500,000 grant for some HVAC units for these projects. So it was a huge benefit to us. It allows our bond fund to go even further. So we're able to accomplish more projects. So thank you to Doug and Aaliyah. Aaliyah helped me put that whole thing together, so. And that ends our presentation. Hopefully we're relatively quick and opens it up for questions, comments from the board.
So this is coming back to A, which is presentations. There is no approval. So we are gonna open, is there a member of the public that would like to speak on this item? We're opening the public comments right now. There are nobody, I don't know, do you have any? Okay. Is there any member of the public online that, please raise your hand feature right now? Okay, there are no public comments about this particular item 8B. We can move to comments from the board. Boards, any comments, questions?
I'm super excited. I think it's great. Yeah, can't wait to see it. I want a field trip.
Yeah, we need to arrange some board tours. I think I'm telling you, it was so exciting the other day.
Yeah.
That was my question. When can we see it?
Okay.
We'll get a couple of dates. We'll send out a couple of dates to Dr. Geller and he can send them out to the board. But yeah, that's like our dream is showcasing this stuff. So yeah, we'd love to make the time.
Maybe invite the city council to see some of this stuff too, because I think they're like, Larry was asking for a slideshow, but
I was just thinking the same thought,
if you just bring them
whatever
out.
dates you send to us, maybe we can send it to city council.
Because you've got new members and
Yeah.
you've got a bunch of new people.
And it's nice to build those partnerships too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking with them. Well, we talked that, but we've been, everything's happening so fast. We haven't keep going with the art club and some hands-on for the project collaboration with the community and bring more art. But it also remind me of some other projects from years ago in San Jose. There were also educational projects, and there were some colorists involved that one of the consultants for the architect were specific on colors. And you were mentioning one of the things that can be done is for more lively, in the last meeting last Friday, it was more lively colors or somehow. I know there will be an extra expense, but I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there that those things exist as somebody who comes and.
Like if you're gonna paint it like in a way that's just like.
That brings joy.
Strategic and brings joy.
And joy, that would be, well, of course, there is the part that you actually gonna do a mural and then you're in the community and in the art club and that's a particular project, but other than that, we're gonna paint this color because we wanna feel this way and these walls in particular, and we're gonna share with this other color, and because you have this vegetation, we're gonna do that. And there are people who
like a whole thoughtful palette. Right?
Yes, they
Like
put a
whole-
palette and they make a whole study of what you want to reflect and what you want from the building, and then they bring you options, and then the community, you know, and then you open that and bring everybody say.
You can tell Myra's getting excited about this as an architect.
Yes, so I don't know, it's just like, I remember having those and bringing, you know, the color palettes from the consultants to community forums and doing that kind of things, and I just, throw it out there, but I remember that on Friday you say that, and like, we could explore more colors.
And then I'm sure you're about to say the same thing. So one of the projects we're talking about, the HVAC and roofing project, Vargas and Fairwood are both going to get exterior paint, and we're currently going through color selection right now with both of those sites.
Okay,
And I will say that one of the palettes is it's brighter, energetic. Is that a good?
Yeah, I think that's a good description. So we were working with the team, with the principals and getting their feedback from their staff, but we have multiple schemes that we want to work through with them.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to see the colors on the screen, but it's another thing to see it brushed out. So we're going to take it to that level next at Vargas and Fairwood.
Yeah, maybe you need an actual design board with the actual Pantene thing put there, and also combine colors other than just the blue strips at the bottom. That is very institutional and.
I know, but selfishly from a maintenance standpoint, like having like base colors that we can like go across the district with makes it very, very much easier to maintain from my selfish
And
lens.
if it's gonna be something that will develop in the 10 schools around them with even more reason, we will maybe have quite many designs that we have, like April, and then maybe they would change all the walls and different than the doors and the window sills, and you know, like some plain color and palette.
Yeah.
And it's not a decision, it's just
You should just
something
have
I'm
all the
throwing out.
kids grab a color of paint and just throw it at the wall.
No, it's like.
I was in a movie and I wanna do that someday, where you just throw the paint.
Well, that's like a
at the wall.
particular art project.
Okay.
It's getting late.
I agree with Isabel that there ought to be some joy in the coloring.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think, well, there is no approval in this one, but we are very grateful for all your work, and we're very excited about this.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That
Thank you.
ends item 8. Thank you. Okay, and now we're moving to item 9B, approval of the resolution R2319 in the matter of Moffett Park specific plan and future development within the city of Sunnyvale. The contact person
It's me.
is, I just wrote it down.
So this is, as I referenced earlier, this is really critical for the future of our school district. And as I said earlier, the city staff understands. There is, I'm gonna write a little bit more about it in the weekend update. There is actually a parcel identified for a potential school site. The acquisition of that land is important, and the potential funding for that if it's necessary, potential funding for the building of a school. There's a lot to be done. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to continue and all of us in the community, if there's community listening, to continue to communicate the importance of this issue for a school in Moffett Park. So this resolution, should you adopt it, will be accompanied by a letter that Brant and I have been working on in conjunction with our attorneys. To make sure it really hits at what's important to our school district in communicating the needs of the children of Sunnyvale, and particularly in Moffett Park and North Sunnyvale.
So this one is a review and action, so there will be a vote at the end. So is there any member of the public who would like to speak on this item? Item is 9B in our agenda. And I don't see anyone in person that has given me any cards, but if there is anyone online, please raise your hand right now, your electronic hand.
None.
None? Okay, there are nobody online, so we can open to the board. Comments and questions, board, do we have any comments and questions? Or we need a motion before we move to the board, so do we have a motion for this?
She's gone.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I had a question.
No, we have a motion first, we need to have a motion and open the.
I move that we approve resolution R 2319 in the matter of off-park specific plan and future development within the city of Sunnyvale.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so before we vote, board, please share your questions and comments, any discussion related to this.
Mike, earlier in the evening, you said that it was urgent that we talk about this because it could be moving in even sooner than we expected. What did you mean by that?
The original thought was, so like for example, our demographer anticipated, I think it was 200 students, Jeremy, within 5 years. It could be more than that. I think it would still be within the 5-year timeframe, but it could be quicker than that. So what the city staff told us was the original plans out there. So there's 3 main owners of the property: J. Paul, Google, and Lockheed Martin. Okay, and then so each of them have developers, commercial, industrial, and residential. So what they're saying is, just given conditions right now, it makes sense to them to move forward faster with the residential than they anticipated maybe 6 months ago. So they've lined up developments ready to go begin the city process is at the as soon as the Moffett Park specific plan is approved. So I don't yet know
That still
how.
is a process that takes a while. It's not gonna happen overnight.
Well, they said occupied by 2025. So, yeah, and that's city staff saying, so.
Is this in response, it can't be, it's too early, but this isn't in response to the city council meeting on Tuesday. This is just a coincidence that we're voting on this.
Well, it's not totally a coincidence. The city council had their meeting because, so we're in a 45-day comment period.
Oh.
So they, 35 days ago or something like that, they issued their draft plan. And so they're seeking lots of input right now. So it's not really a coincidence. That
So
all these
this is
things are
our
coming together.
intentional response to the
Yeah.
city's draft plan.
Right.
Do you happen to be familiar with the distribution of the housing units, if there will be mostly 1-bedroom apartments or like more townhouses?
That is to be determined by the developers in conjunction with the city.
Okay.
I don't know how they'll do that, but they have a target of,
Probably a mix of them.
yeah, there's a target mix of, the number of units and the population.
Right,
So-
and I feel like our demographics hinge on that, so.
Yes, and it's like high density, typically when you look at high density developments, like if you look at downtown Sunnyvale, it doesn't generate that many students. But if there's enough of it, enough buildings, not generating that many students, eventually that's some. Right? So that's kind of what this is gonna be. I think they're also intending to make it family friendly within high density, which is the thing city staff talked to us the other day about is it's gonna be a whole different type of community than what we're used to in Sunnyvale or this valley, right? It's gonna be, think more San Francisco than, more urban, high density, which is
Well, so they're
just different.
multi-use, not just residential, multi-use in a way, because more urban, it means like more walking distance things and.
Yeah, there's some, if you look here, it's interesting, all the questions are about, or right, most of them were about schools. There's some amazing design features in the Moffett Park specific plan that are gonna be really pretty exciting, but it's gonna be very different.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because so it's not like those high density, like the development in front of Costco. That is residential, probably a lot of families, I think that's like for families pretty much, but it's very dense.
Yeah, I don't know.
building.
What do you think, Brant?
I would say it's probably similar to that, like 1-2 bedroom townhome condos is kind of what it appears to be in the plan currently.
Okay.
Just high-rise. So I know Costco's only 3 stories, the residential units over there are only 3 stories, these would be more.
Is there any, like thought about, like hypothetically, doing something where, I know you were saying like a K-8 school, because in theory that would be like consolidating like middle school, and you know, it'd just be probably less expensive to build one site. But like, you know, over at the Santa Clara site where they have, even though they're a unified district, they do some sharing of space and resources and stuff like that. Is there, like, have you talked to the high school district at all about partnering with them, like?
We haven't.
Space?
The site that's identified by the city is 4 acres, which is substantially smaller than any of our sites. However, I'm just, like, this is what I'm gonna write to you tomorrow. It's bounded by open space that the concept is that the city would own that and then share it with us, which is kind of the opposite of what we do now. We own the open space and then we share it with the city.
Yeah.
So that would be the concept. In any case, it's gonna have to be very, very dense.
Yeah.
So a typical comprehensive high school is 40 acres,
40 acres is what they said.
something like that. Our schools tend to be in the range of 8 to 10. So anything's possible. They did say, the city staff did say that their interest is to serve the residents, particularly the elementary age residents of Moffett Park in Moffett Park. So they're not necessarily interested in, like, if we were to say, we need to build a school and have all the, let's talk about this, close the school and move all the kids from that school into Moffett Park, they're like, no, that's not what we're thinking, that's not what we're thinking either.
Yeah.
They don't want people going in and out of Moffett Park, they want it to serve Moffett Park.
Sure.
So, and I think a high school most high schools are far
This
more
has to be
than,
bigger by.
much bigger, and there'd be kids going in, so I don't, that's for Graham to figure out.
The other thing is that, like, even though, like, if they make it very child friendly, there will be families that move in there. But when they do talk about, like, you know, I know sometimes they'll talk about, oh, it's just gonna be a lot of 1-bedrooms. There's families that live in 1-bedrooms. I mean, because there's just no housing here. So if it's remotely affordable, people are gonna live there.
That's what we're saying, like, so we're assuming a very low student generation rate, even at that, it's 1,200 students.
Yeah.
Right, that was I guess that's my question, like, if you have 20,000 housing units and the entire city of Cupertino has 22,000 houses, is one school enough?
Well, that's actually a good question, it may not be.
Yeah.
But based on how that type of housing normally is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Yeah.
And then it goes through cycles, right? Because like on my street, you know, there were the original owners, and then there's, you know, they aged out of there or their kids lived there or whatever. And now we're at the situation where there were like 6 single people living in the house with all their cars because that was like, they were gonna have a multi-bedroom house that they were gonna share. They got kicked out, there's gonna be a family living in there. There were tons of people coming through with like little kids. I was like, okay, welcome to the cul-de-sac. We'll be around a while.
I just want to say thank you to Brant and Mike and whoever else who's like put a lot of work and time into this, like one, just being aware and then being proactive and stuff. So thank you for the
going to the meetings.
Attention.
Brant's been attending meetings late.
The attention and the foresight, yeah. And I think we're ready to vote.
Yes, so do we have, if we're done with the discussion, maybe it's time to close that. And as we are gonna go to a vote, so all those in favor to approve the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes on item 8B. Okay, so now we move to Consent. No, 10 already, we have 9B, okay, so we move to item B.
No, we just did 9B,
Consent.
10.
Consent agenda.
10, we move to consent agenda items. Any item in the consent agenda is subject to review and discussion prior to being approved by the board. If necessary, any item can be removed for a separate action or discussion. The public may address the board regarding any items on the consent agenda. If there is any member of the public who wishes to speak on the consent agenda, please use the raise hand feature now. Okay, there is none. Will the board or public would like to pull any items for separate
I move
consideration?
approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Okay,
I will second.
okay. So if there is any discussion or we're ready to vote? Okay, if we're ready to vote, please, all these in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, and with that, the consent agenda has been passed, and we are done with item 10, and we move to item 11, the future meetings and the adjournment of the meeting. The next one will be on Tuesday, February 16, 2023 at 6 p.m. I wanted to bring to the board too that I mentioned this before, that in the June meeting, I found that we moved, I don't remember why, the June 22nd meeting, we put it on June 22nd for some reason, and now I realize that on June 22nd, I'm gonna be just arriving from a multi-day drafting trip. I may or may not make it back in one piece, so we might, yes, heads up if we can open discussions on, I don't know, we can like move the date or change or I just want it, so. I may or may, I will try, yeah.
Okay.
So other than that, we are done with today's meeting, and this looks like deja vu. We are at 10, we are almost 10. It's 9:56, and this is the time of the meeting. Today, good evening, and thank you to the interpreters today.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Fabiola.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.